I'd like to call this meeting of the El Centro City Council to order. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Silva?
Present.
Councilmember Villegas Walker?
Here.
Councilmember Garcia?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cardenas?
Present.
And Mayor Jackson.
Here. This time, we'd like to have the pledge led by Councilwoman Villegas Walker, and our invocation will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Cardenas.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you guys join me in a moment of prayer? Father God, thank you again for this day, Lord, and we're just grateful for all those that are here today. Lord, we ask that you continue to watch over our employees, our citizens, Lord, our staff, our council members. We just ask that you continue to give us the guidance and wisdom as we do our city work. In your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. This time, we'd like to have our report from our city attorney from closed session.
There's no reportable action, Your Honor.
Thank you. And presentations, announcements by the mayor, I have none. Scheduled public comment, we do have Mr. David Tyler with the El Centro Chamber of Commerce monthly report. Good afternoon, Mr. Tyler.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. I didn't quite expect to be up there that quick. This is my quickest time that I've had.
So we're going to try and move.
Actually, I want to thank you all for letting me appear before you this year. This is my last report to you as my term as president of the Chamber of Commerce is coming to a close. I have just a brief report. Please, all of you, if you can, come to our annual dinner on the 16th of June. We're not having a mixer in June because the 16th, when we have the annual dinner, takes that spot. I want to thank the city very much for its membership in the Chamber of Commerce. Your President's Circle level membership is extremely helpful. And that's really all I have that's formal. We have had brief discussions today at the Chamber Executive Committee. We haven't had a chance to meet as a full board to discuss the sales tax issue, Mayor Jackson, that you came to talk to us about. I just want to give you a little bit of feedback of what I've gotten so far. On the TOT side, that's a little bit easier one. We've got a few hotel owners that have said, it should be the way it is. Others, frankly, have said, you know what, it's not going to make a difference. It's fine. They have said 15 seems high, 10 seems a little low, 12 and a half is kind of a little bit of the sweet spot. So can't remember really what the number was that you guys were.
13.
So, but anyway.
So we're in your sweet spot? We're good, right?
I think you're in the ballpark right there.
All right.
You know, on the sales tax, we've got to talk a lot about that at the chamber level. I can tell you that no one has cornered me at a barbecue or pulled me aside and said, you know, as the chamber president, you really should support the city in this issue. So I won't say necessarily it's gone the opposite way, but it's been kind of close. And we had conversations that we want to get a little bit more information on that. And I think we were a little bit remiss. We should have had a little bit further conversation because maybe the right thing for us to do is send you, if it's possible, Mayor Jackson, like a list of questions.
Yeah,
so that you aren't we aren't forcing you to read our mind of what our concerns are. You know what I mean? Sure. And if we could send you a list of questions of what's the really projected revenue, what other expenses need to be made that need to be addressed on the short term, because I know you've addressed those issues, and then the long-term ones as well, to give you a chance to lay it out. I know you did an excellent job when you came to our board meeting and did it verbally, but I think a lot of the people would like to see it, some things in writing, so they would need to see that.
If you could get those questions to me, what I can do is not only I'll get them answered by staff and council, but maybe we can I'll make your next meeting and we can, kind of go over them in person.
Yeah, and I think what I do want to leave with this last thought is that whatever decision the chamber board comes to, I want you to know that all the board members have the best interest of El Centro in their mind, and they will be expressing it in whatever those concerns are. So again, thank you very much for letting me come before you this year, and I've enjoyed it.
A couple comments from, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Tyler, first of all, I want to thank you for your year. I think you did an incredible job in advocating for the chamber and the business community. So I do want to congratulate you and thank you for all your work you did this year. I also want to thank you for having the time to sit down with our city manager as well on some of the issues related to the chamber. And also thank you for your support with the state of the city as well. So appreciate all your efforts. Hopefully you don't leave too far or still close by, but we have really appreciated all your leadership and passion that you have for our business community, and I want to personally thank you, sir.
Thank you, thank you.
Any other comments? Sheldon?
Likewise, I want to appreciate what you've done, David, and there's always been this calming tone about your voice, even when you have issues that are pressing, there's a lot of comfort and professionalism, and I really appreciate that, and good luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you very much.
Can't believe how fast the year has gone.
I know,
Mr.
I know.
Tyler, and it's wonderful to see you and the support of your beautiful wife, Joan. I know that behind every successful man is a surprised mother-in-law, and just kidding. It does take time away from your family to fulfill right? So I thank you on behalf of the community for an excellent
Thank you.
year of your leadership.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Your mic.
Yeah, your mic. I just want to say thank you, David. I really enjoyed us coming together for the State of the City. And I think it was a lot of fun. It was something different, and I think everybody had a good time with that. But I want to say that as my counterpart for the chamber and your representation, I think you've certainly done the chamber proud. And as a member of the chamber, I appreciate everything you've done over the past year. So thank you very much. Okay, we are on to consent. Is there any items wishing to be pulled by members?
I don't want to pull it, but I do have a comment with regard to item number 9.
Item number 9, okay. Do you want to make that comment now?
Yeah, I would just like to congratulate staff on being selected to move forward with the application process from throughout the SCAG region. I just wanted to report that there were a number of proposals from Los Angeles that were selected to move forward, Ventura, Orange County, San Bernardino. No proposals were accepted from Riverside and Imperial County. So I just, again, want to congratulate staff on a job well done to move forward in the application process. Really says a lot, so.
Good job. All right, seeing no other comments or anything regarding consent, look for a motion to approve items number 2 through 10. We have a motion by Cardenas, second by Garcia. Please ballot. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, on to unfinished business. Item number 11, we have a consolidation of Library Board and Community Services Commission. Presentation by Marcelo Piedra, our Community Services Director. No. Yeah. If there's anybody that wishes to speak on any items today, please make sure you fill a blue speaker slip and get it to our clerk before the item comes to close.
Yes, good evening, or good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. This is actually, as you pointed out, an unfinished business. This item was first presented to you back on your meeting of February the 16th, and it had to do with the possibility of consolidating our Library Board and Community Services Commission. During that discussion, when staff presented this to you, there were several questions that came up during that discussion, and having to do with how do we actually handle the Library Board, which is a board that was created through the California Education Code. And staff did request a legal opinion on this, and basically it was determined that given that the Library Board was created through the Education Code, this council cannot dissolve that board. Therefore, you'll see in the city staff recommendation that based upon that, and obviously we're going to follow with the Community Services Commission and what's done with that particular commission, for purposes of discussion, we're going to call this potentially new board, Community Services Board. And the recommendation that staff is making is that given that you have to adhere to the California Education Code, which requires you to have a library board that includes 5 members, we're recommending that this Community Services Board be composed of 5 members in order to meet that requirement, along with having terms that basically are consistent with the Education Code, which is 3 years. So I'll start off with that. If council decides to proceed with that recommendation, we would have to go back and change certain city ordinances to allow that to happen. So that's the first question related to the total number of board members, again, based upon the requirements of the library board. Then the follow-up conversation that took place was how do we determine, or do we need to terminate the members of the library board and also community services commission? Again, given that you cannot terminate or end the library board terms, the recommendation is obviously that we continue with the board members that we have. Now, I do want to point out that on June 30th of this year, we have 3 terms that are ending. And those are of Mr. Doug Newland, Judy Hashem, and Mr. Tom Barrington. Mr. Newland has indicated that he is not seeking reappointment, so that there's going to be a vacancy there. Mrs. Hashem has indicated that if we continue operating as an independent board, that she may consider reappointment. But if we move in the direction of consolidating, that perhaps maybe she might not consider that. And with Mr. Barrington, he is actually in the audience, so he may indicate what position he has. We did try to contact him, and we're unable to discuss this particular topic with him. With respect to Mr. Tyler and Mr. Perez, their terms end on June 30th of 2017. And if they have any comments, I'm sure they'll address you later when the presentation is finalized. So that's in terms of the membership of the library board. You cannot at this point terminate those terms as indicated earlier. With respect to the Community Services Commission, it's a 7-member commission, and this commission was created through city ordinance, which means that this council, should it take action, can dissolve that commission. We do have 2 terms that have expired for 2 members, which is basically Mr. Richard Ryan and also Robin Dodge. Their term expired on May 6th of 2016. So there's 2 vacancies. Of course, they still continue being on the commission until this council decides to reappoint those 2 members and replace them. And of course, in your report, you see the other term expirations for the other remaining members of the commission. So again, given with the commission, you do have the option of dissolving that. And if you decide to proceed with the new Community Services Board, we would suggest that you go through a new application process. Of course, those members that are serving in our existing commission can apply and be considered for this new Community Services Board. And again, based on the legal opinion, once you get those, then you can follow the process that we have for appointment to boards and commissions. I did include as part of the report a table that kind of illustrates what the possible membership could be and when you would do those appointments. Again, given that in June 30th, we do have 3 library trustees that their terms are ending, potentially be 3 new appointments for this new Community Services Board. In terms of, there was another question that was brought up during the discussion about how do you handle agendas for this new board. And basically, again, based on the opinion received, if we do have 1 board, 1 agenda would be sufficient for purposes of the Brown Act. And the way we would handle that agenda, it would be no different than the process you go through as a city council, where you sit in as city council, and then if there's business to conduct as successor agency, then you would basically function as members of that successor agency. So it would be no different in terms of how your agenda is set up. We do have the foundation, which is the Friends of El Centro Community Services Foundation, and you may recall this is set up as a nonprofit, and the members of this board do come from, right now, the Library Board and Community Services Commission. Should we transition into the new board, then you would select members from this new Community Services Board to serve on that foundation board. Currently, we have Councilmember Cardenas, which is part of that foundation board, Mr. David Tyler, Mr. Tom Barrington, Robin Raj, and Richard Ryan. So at this time, we are looking for direction as to this item. and determining whether we proceed with the new Community Services Board or whether or not we continue operating as two independent boards.
All right, thank you, Marcella. I think Ms. Walker has a question?
So, Marcella, I know that this is an item that's come back to us, and I think you've done an excellent job of summarizing the operational aspects of combining the boards, but I don't think that we've maybe provided enough detail as to the reasons behind. Why is this a good idea for us to combine the boards? What's the benefit other than, you know, streamlining the process? Why would we consider doing this? I mean, and in particular, a couple of things I want to be assured is that, number one, we're doing it for the right reasons, and it's not just to streamline a process so that, you know, we only meet once a month and we have a smaller group and things like that. So it's not making it easier. So I want to know what are the desired outcomes. And number two, what assurances do we have that parks, recreation, and library will all receive the appropriate level of oversight and engagement? Third issue that I have is that in this day and age when we are pretty much begging for volunteers to participate, where we see civic engagement falling off, whether it's in attendance at service clubs or just getting volunteers out or voting, fill in the blank. And yet we have potentially 14 people, 7 members of the Community Services Commission, plus the 2 members, senior members we were going to add, plus 5 members of the library board. So we're talking about 14 engaged members in our community and, you know, whacking that down to 5. So I want to understand how in this age when we need civic engagement, we're kind of backing up from that process. And then the other real concern I have is with regard to the library and the fact that I was at a presentation last Friday night, the Celebration of Education put on by ICOE. And Dr. Fennell essentially said, if children are not reading at grade level by 3rd grade, that pretty much is going to determine their success in school for the rest of for the rest of their lives. Sure. By 3rd grade. So I'm worried that if we don't specifically focus on the library and opportunities that the library can use to engage school-age children, that we're going to be missing an opportunity to help the young people in our city. So I need to understand a little bit more.
Sure. Well, this was a conversation that took place. Again, we started this discussion with both boards, the Library Board and the Community Services Commission. And when we presented it, and obviously Mayor Jackson was there with me when we had this conversation with the 2 boards, one issue has been we've had some attendance issues with some members, and the good thing is we have had participation with respect to the library board. You know, we had a conversation with the board members and indicated that attendance is very important because, as you pointed out, it's very important that if we have members that are part of commissions and boards, that they are working with staff to try to, you know, provide that guidance and support as far as, you know, the activities that we're doing. So attendance has improved, so that is good. We also pointed out that when we consolidated basically into Community Services Department, we encompass, you know, obviously library services, parks and recreation, and there's some overlap in terms of conversations when we have these board meetings. And again, Mayor Jackson, you were there when we had a presentation, and we did have, you know, I believe one of our members from our Community Services Commission, Mr. Johnson, who attended when we had the library design workshop, and we were talking about the future functionality of that building, basically, where it's turning into basically a community building where you're offering library services. So there's some overlap there. I think it would help in terms of quorum. I think the larger the group, the more maybe it becomes a challenge to conduct business when you don't have enough members present to conduct business. So that would certainly be a benefit. But again, staff is seeking direction as to whether or not you want to proceed with this or not. We can continue operating as independent boards. But again, there was just a conversation that, surfaced because of now being community services.
And I think to add to that, I mean, I've been to 3 or 4 meetings since I've come on as mayor of both bodies, and there are still a couple members that I haven't met, that haven't been to any of the meetings that I've been to, specifically on the Community Services Commission. So even though there's 7 members on that commission, they routinely have 5, and there's a couple people absent almost every time. A couple times they've had 4, and one time we waited for a quorum for 20 minutes. So they've had some quorum issues also. Initially, when we did meet with both boards were were in favor of the consolidation. They both said that they did see the duplicity and some of the talking points that were being presented by staff, and then somewhere between there and when we came to the council, that kind of evolved and they started changing their minds. So,
See, I think to that point, Mr. Jackson, I think that this would be a really easy decision if both the boards came forward and said, we're fine with combining. But I've heard more people speak in opposition to the combination than I have saying, let's bring it all together.
well, I've got some members that have privately said that they're in favor of it. I have a couple that are speaking in opposition of it tonight. But I think this is not necessarily. I think the whole point of the consolidation is to do better by the city as far as get more efficient. Staff expends a lot of staff time presenting, in some cases, the exact same material to 2 different bodies in the same week, and so that's a problem. That's an issue. In the last library, I think you were at the last library meeting too, where they started talking about, oh no, you missed the last one, but the last one we went to, they talked about the design committee. They actually spoke a lot about how, as Marcella said, the libraries are evolving into community centers where they happen to have books. The design of the community room, and having all these extracurricular activities at the libraries, and so they really are starting to mesh and starting to become one, whereas I think before, a library was a library and a park was a park. So I think you're starting to see a lot of that mix there, and I think it just makes sense. There are some members that, and one of the reasons I think now is a good time is because we have so many that are up for reappointment, and we've had a few that have said they're not interested in reappointment. So although currently we haven't done the 2 seniors, but we have 12, at least 2 of them have expressed no interest in reappointment, and then we still have 2 more empty seats. So, it seems like now's a good time, and I've specifically or purposely not done any appointments until we could get to this point to try to resolve this issue.
See, kind of the mixed message that we've sent, though, is that adding the seniors, right, to increase to 9, maybe what we need to do in terms of efficiencies is just go down to a 5-member CSC board.
But I think Mr. Stowe has a recommendation.
I do see the efficiencies. I think what I've been told and understand is that there is duplication. We're already stretching our staff quite a bit to have a duplication in 2 meetings. I think creates efficiencies. I was, however, ready to vote no on this because of the commitment that we had made to our seniors that they would have some representation in the Community Services Commission, and the initial read-through of the backup information would not allow for that. And so I was ready to vote no just on that premise, and that we were backtracking on a commitment that we had made to our senior representations. But I think a fair compromise that has been suggested is to add 2 ex officio seats to our new board, where those 2 representatives of the 2 advocates for seniors will be able to participate, will be able to get the agendas. They are members of the board. The only difference that they wouldn't be voting. that still provides a venue for communication, a venue for participation, a venue to get their ideas on the table, and I think that's a fair compromise. I'm okay with that. That was suggested today, and I think with that provision, with that modification, I'm comfortable with moving forward.
But how does that change anything in real time? I mean, because seniors now, right? Seniors now can get the agenda. Seniors now can attend the meetings. Seniors can participate. So by making them ex officio members,
Because I think-
what does that change?
It changes in that you are a member of that board. It elevates your level of commitment to the board and to the city because you are a member of that board. It's just like, when we served on as ex official members of the hospital board,
Right.
I took that to be, I'm a member of the board, even though I did not get to vote on the matter. So it's different when you're looking for things on the agenda as opposed to getting the agenda, having access to staff, and I think staff will be probably more responsive because you are a member of that board. And I think they're not quite the same when it's a member of the public just reading the agendas as opposed to a board member, an ex official board member.
I have a follow-up. Mr. Jackson, I'm going to be very upfront. I'm actually very against the consolidation. I think that the timing may be not appropriate at this time. I think when we have, well, first of all, I want to tell Marcelo, I really appreciate the staff report. It was presented in a very objective manner, and you shared all the details of it, and I appreciate the way it's presented and written up, and the fact that you're asking council for direction as opposed to a recommendation. I really appreciate that as well. But I think Councilmember Walker kind of hit the nail right on the head, and the fact that you're taking 12 citizen voices down to 5 in 2 critical areas of quality of life is just something that I don't think is appropriate, and I don't think it's a representation of our city. When I look at these advisory committees and I look at the commissioners, they are a very critical component into the direction that we head in terms of our programming and services. So I always take into account what their discussions are. In regards to the agenda, well, the agenda is made up by the chair and by staff. So the reason why there's probably duplication on the agenda is because that's what maybe they're agreeing to in terms of their agenda. But we have 12,000 active library card holders. We have 4,000 to 6,000 people that visit our library every month, and I think they need more than 2 voices on that committee. We're in the middle of a feasibility study. We have our aquatic center that's coming up, and I think we need more citizen input when it comes to those deals and those circumstances in regards to future programming. I like the idea, but the fact that we're gonna have to go back to all these other ordinances, amend them, have public hearings, and et cetera, all for what?
We don't have to do that.
Well, do you agree there'll be administrative support and administrative costs associated with that?
No?
So amending the ordinance in regards to the El Centro, the Friends of the El Centro Community Foundation, there's no associated cost or work in terms of staff in doing that?
No more than what we're doing right now.
Well, if we stayed status quo, there would be no work needed.
Well, I guess I'd have to disagree because you're comparing time of one-time work to amend the ordinance, and you're comparing that to the time expended every single month for the rest of for eternity as far as we keep those 2 commissions.
Well, my point is that if
And
we
there's-
stay.
and there's not going to be 2 members on the library board. There's still going to be 5, and the proposal or the friendly amendment from Mr. Silva is to add 2 more members, so there's going to be 7.
Well, again, I think we can still benefit those 12 voices down to 5 is something that I'm not in support of.
But it's not 12 voices when those voices aren't showing up to meetings.
Well,
Just because your name's on a piece of paper.
So let me throw this out at you. If what we've been talking about, a lot of the reason behind this is because of issues with a quorum, efficiencies, could we not just reduce the number of people on the Community Services Commission? Instead of having 7 members, why don't we just reduce it to 5?
And reduce your quorum.
Include the two members, the two senior members as voting members. So we have a 5-member Community Services Commission, and 2 of those members are the senior members that we had talked about earlier. And for the library board, could we in fact get by with a 3-member library board?
No. For the library, you need to have 5.
Okay, then we need to identify the right people that are gonna show up to the meetings.
Well, there should already be policy, though. There should be policy, absentee policy on there, and I'm not sure.
Well, there
if-
is.
I-
That
And
if you miss a
again,
certain number of
and
meetings, you're
I'm
out.
not sure if it's the chair's position or staff's position in regards to that, but if there's 3 unexcused absences, then change needs to come, period. And again, I don't know, I know those could be difficult circumstances, but again, I mean, there is policy in place to address that. Now, if we've chosen not to address it, well, that's why we're in this predicament, because we haven't followed up on that, in my opinion.
Can we reduce the Community Services Commission to 5 members without a bunch of hullabaloo?
I believe you can. We would have to come back and modify that particular section of the code that references currently, right now, 9 members to 5.
How will we do that? What are the mechanics to do that? We just let,
Basically, we need to revise the city ordinance, we bring it back to you, and you, just like no different than when you appointed the 2 members that were representing the interests of the seniors, and we bring it to you, and it gets changed.
but as far as the selection of the, there'll be a selection of a new board? And so-
Just, I guess maybe I'm gonna look to our city attorney. It seems to me that if you don't wanna dissolve because it sounds to me like you still wanna continue having them as 2 independent boards.
Well, I think you're hearing at least a couple of voices.
Or,
Yeah, I
so
think,
running
you know-
with that scenario, we would have to, if we wanna reduce it from 9 to 5, we have to make that change in the code. Now, in terms of the actual selection of those members, you currently have, right now, I believe, 5 members whose terms have not expired from the community service, so you can leave them intact,
yeah.
because their terms are still
And the 2 people that
valid.
are expired, you can't do anything with.
Exactly.
And you can't add the seniors unless you dissolve the entire board and then reconstitute the board as a new board to
Exactly.
account for the seniors. That's why, that's why I've held off on the appointment of the seniors, and I have held off on the appointment of the 2 expired board members, because otherwise we are accomplishing nothing.
In terms of, I think one of the things, and we kind of talked about this with the community services members, if you look at the function of a commissioner, in reality, their role and their function is to represent all. They should be representing, children, seniors, youth. They represent the community. When you appoint them, I believe, as a council, the hope is that they represent all groups, and that, they don't particularly focus on just one sector. Even in the application that you have, and I was looking at that application that we have when we go out and seek, members of the board. If there is a specific interest that you want to actually, highlight, you can include that right in that application that says, what special skills, civic or community involvement or membership you're interested in. So if there's a specific focus, and if you look at the makeup currently of our commissioners, it's pretty varied. You have, I think, different groups perhaps represented in terms of age,
It's a
ethnic.
pretty
So it's I
well-rounded
think,
board.
and when you select as a council, I think you kind of look at that and you balance that out as well. So I think with what we have and the process we have, you have that ability to do that. But if we want to reduce the number, then we have to come back with those changes.
If I can chime in, I think that Councilmember Silva is absolutely right. There was a commitment made to the seniors, and that needs to be upheld. Although I'm also concerned, just like Mayor Jackson, that there are efficiency issues and that there are quorum issues. And it seems that there is an overlap because most modern libraries now are becoming community centers, and that's essentially how they're classified. So I could see the potential for a lot of overlapping issues. I think that going forward with a new smaller board will elevate the amount of responsibility given to those people serving on the board, and it will not diminish the ability of the public to essentially chime in with their thoughts. And so I would be comfortable going forward with the recommendations of Mr. Silva.
We have 2 speaker slips. I want to call up Mr. Tom Barrington.
Mr. Counsel, I just wish to make a clarification. There was a comment made that I hadn't contributed to the fact that I do wish to continue on the board. That's all it is. Ironically, I just advised Ms. Piedra, we've been playing telephone tag for a while.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Barrington. Mr. Pete Rodriguez?
Good evening, City Council. I'm opposed to the combination of the 2 boards for specific reasons. One, if there's any option we can do, I would prefer maybe a 7 more we're going to combine, because the seniors were made an offer maybe a year ago, and they're still here. They haven't gone away. They actually attended the last Community Service Commission meeting, and they're not going away. And they feel because they're here because they don't feel they have a voice. I mean, I made a commitment to attend an event for them today, for this week at 11. I pop it in there every other Friday, see how it's going. Pretty active on my commission. And in our commission, we've only had 1 member not been truly in attendance for a while, and it's been addressed. But it's unfortunate that you may say we may overlap, but we're pretty much oversight to different groups, probably different services to our community. And I see as a Community Service Commission that we know we oversight the parks, but now we have facilities we got to watch and fees, and we know our summer program, we're filled to capacity. We brought in revenue. And instead of meeting maybe 4 times a year, I think we need to meet monthly because we're bringing in revenue. And a group that meets maybe maybe 4 times a year is not providing good oversight to you guys. I think this committee needs to meet monthly. That'd be my recommendation. I know I've been off work a couple months because of foot surgery, so I've been going around and see what parks needs, and I can tell you to make Marcelo's job a lot easier. And I know you're not gonna like it, Mr. City Manager, but you guys need to hire more park maintenance people. We have a small crew. They're stretched to their limits. Our parks are not the gold standard because we don't have enough staffing. Where our grass is not green because of drought. I understand that, but it doesn't look promising in some of these parks, the way they look. We invested money in Sparta, and you go out there and look at it, and it's not the vision that we once wanted to be. And it's back to square one. The other day I was bike riding in Buckland and reported a problem at the pump station in Marcella. It got handled quickly, but if members of the committee aren't reporting things in the park, then who is going on? And I think we need to take a consideration into having these group of people, our seniors, and I'll put myself in this. I'm only 6 years away from that group. Okay, 6 years away. So I do empathize with them, but they not having had a voice and not being heard, and their concerns. I work with seniors a lot at my job site, so I know where they come from. They live longer. They're educated, and they want to be serving our community in some capacity. So please take in consideration. There's one thing is, let's give these people back there a chance to be involved in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. We have one more with Mr. Adrian Perez.
Good evening. On the whole combining, consolidating, I'm not against it, but I'm not also for it. Because in my standard, I have a son who's 11 years old. So for me, the library is important because it's education, but so are the parks because, well, I take them to the parks and play with them there. So, but what I'm here also going off the question is, well, what is the good reason for consolidation? And all I've really heard is to make city staff easier, or for the job, for you guys to make it easier. But my question would be, well, how's that better for the board? And how's that better for the residents? And I think that's one thing I've just been thinking about. And I cannot honestly come up with one good reason, other than efficiency for you guys, but what us? I know it's duplicity for you guys, but we don't hear the same thing twice. And I guess in regards to the quorum for the city services, or not city services, community services, if there's a huge problem with that quorum, I'd be willing to join that if it doesn't produce a conflict of interest with me staying on the library board. So I'm available for that, and I pretty much make all my meetings. I know I've missed some, but I mean, it's things like that. And if you guys want us to work together, I'm really also open to that. So saying, oh, hey, library and community service, let's come up with some project together and kind of work on that. But I think the benefit of having different groups is, well, there's a bunch of different mindsets. So you get a mindset from here and here and say, okay, let's put it together. But yeah, that might work better in the beginning, but once in a while, I mean, the way I see it, the adrenaline or the mind process, it would just kind of start diminishing, as opposed to saying, hey, let's work on this project together, let's work on this project together as different groups combining together, if that makes sense. And I'll get kind of confusing.
No, I think
Sorry.
that makes a lot of sense, and I guess I'm going to throw this out there just as a question to those that currently serve on the Community Services Commission, our seniors and staff. There's frequently with advisory boards, you have certain seats that are allocated to represent specific interests, and that way every voice is heard. If we move to a 7-member consolidated board, and we had 2 members that were designated as park representatives, 2 members representing recreation, 2 members representing library services, 1 member representing seniors, and then 1 ex officio member representing seniors, we would have a 7-member board. Every interest would be guaranteed at least 2 voices, because my concern is that any one voice is drowned out.
Are you referring to this board
Yeah.
expanding? But I understood that we could not.
Why can't we have a 7-member board?
We're mandated to be.
Is, based on the opinion we received from Mr. Morita, is the library board is established in a state code and says 5. And so we could not deviate from that 5 under the education code. And that's why we went to that extra process. It's the Community Service Commission that you have full control over.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that we can't dissolve the library, or we can dissolve the library board.
You
No,
can,
we
you
can't.
can only dissolve the Community Service
So the
Commission.
new,
Nor can we expand the membership.
yeah,
You cannot expand the
We're
membership
stuck at 5.
at
Yeah,
5
it's the ag
since
code.
1910.
1910, good stuff.
I know, it's, when I looked at it, it's like, really?
Yeah. Because if we could have expanded it, it
In
would
fact, I
have
would
been
defer
easier.
now to our city attorney.
But that's why we can only have 5 and 2 ex officios.
Okay, but this sounds like kind of a quick legislative fix, right? Couldn't we just ask for change to the ed code?
I've never heard.
I mean, does anybody know?
I've never heard quick and legislative together.
No, I mean, no, I'm serious. I bet no one has ever looked at this issue. Because I can, this is one of those crazy esoteric
Mayor,
things.
if I may, from what I have read, trying to look online, every library out there is at 5, and we're talking about changing every library board in the state. That's why we came to you for direction. It's, while we see some benefits here, we also, these are your boards, and they're providing you with that, like your other commissions that are out there and boards, they're there to advise you, and that's why we are looking for this direction, which was indicated, there was a desire for that. We see, from our side, a great deal, we see overlap, but we see that overlap increasing as we go forward with our parks, recreation, and library. And this is not new to the city, it's not new to this state. I think the ones that are, staff that have attended the national conferences, all they talk about is how libraries have changed, how community centers have changed. That's where we're at today. So it's how you want to proceed. Clearly, you can have, the question is do you want your library commission, your trustees, that's the term for it, the library trustees also functioning as community services? I'm talking parks and recreation. And we can make that work, but we need to know, is that what you want to wind up with at the end? We have the 5, there's potential you could actually have a couple of extras that don't serve on library issues. But library issues that are solely library under the same education code really falls into two narrow areas, and it's within the code, is hours of operation and input on the city librarian's performance. That's where the actions come in. The rest of it is input. So we wind up having the same discussions, such as the summer programs. How do they work? So do we have two different discussions, or do we have one group discussing this so we can go forward with a unified plan for the community? Because, by the way, the community doesn't see it any different. They look at our libraries, our community centers, our parks. That's what they're here for. And
Okay, but if I have to judge, let me just be frank here. If I have to judge the success of our library programs versus the success of Parks and Recreation, we already know where we have opportunities for improvement with regard to some of our library programs. In particular, summer reading programs, adult reading programs, learning to read programs. I think that we have a lot more opportunities at the library that need to be vetted. We already know that our Parks and Recreation, I think that all of our programs are at capacity for summer. When I talked with Pat on Monday, she said that no slots left. And so I'm worried that the library is going to lose its voice if we're not.
I don't see it. I see it as a synergy between both the members that are coming together as a single board, and you have a broader scope of more global scope of services to our citizens, and you're able to connect the dots from one as it relates to the other, and not have two separate bodies looking at the same thing and perhaps not connecting those dots. I'm in support of this, with the provision that we address the needs of our seniors and I asked about the possibility of increasing this board to 5 to 7, because I think that would have resulted in a much cleaner way. I was told that that's not an option,
So
the compromise will be the ex officio.
Okay, so I don't understand this. I'm looking at the Friends of the Roseville Public Library Board.
That's the Friends of, it's not the library.
But that's,
Different.
it's not the library
That's
trustees.
not the library.
is this an option for us?
That's the foundation.
Nonprofit.
That's a foundation for the library. Most Friends of Libraries have a nonprofit board. Question, maybe Betsy, you can answer this. Is there anything that restricts us from adding, instead of 2 ex officios, adding 3 ex officios?
No.
Okay. To go back to Ms. Walker's suggestion of the 2, 2, 2, and 1,
With one ex
with 1 ex officio, that's an 8-member board. So maybe, Mr. So, you might consider a friendly amendment to a 5-member board with 3 ex officios.
But two of those ex officios would be
Senior.
not seniors, but we can't say age criteria.
Correct.
But we can designate them as senior advocates.
Correct.
Which can be.
Could be a 13-year-old, yeah.
Could be,
Yeah.
so there's no age restriction, but we're just looking at someone that would advocate. Who would the other ex officio seat go to?
Parks, Recreation, and Library.
But the,
This is what we're trying to marry, guys, is if we are looking to put on someone who is going to be a senior advocate, should we not then also be concerned about having a parks advocate, a recreation advocate, a library advocate? Or
I'm a little concerned about putting people in boxes, because that means then,
But isn't that what we're doing with the senior population?
but to me, that's a very very distinct need that we're trying to address, as opposed to globally parks and recreation. That's a global service for our community. Seniors do have specific needs, and there's some comments been made that we as a city are not providing services to seniors as we should, and so giving them that specific advocacy, I think would mitigate that. Parks and Recreation is a global service that I think all 7, including seniors, will be able to contribute towards the decisions and the recommendations that come to us. So I don't know that we need a special advocate for Parks and Recreation.
Okay, so
because I think the other 5 members will take care of it.
Okay, I'm hoping we can fashion a solution, and this council has always been really, really good at that. I'm not in favor of having both senior members be ex officio, because I think that that creates kind of this caste system or two-tiered system.
And if I may, and the conversation was with the council member and I, because I said, well, are there any alternatives? So we brainstormed. Under this scenario, and this is, under this discussion, that's all this is if you had 5 members, 2 ex officio, where the mayor and the council approves where people fit in that group, because the 5 issue has to do with education code. That's the only reason we're having that discussion. What advocates go into those 5 who are, well, let's take the 3 that you have coming up, who would be appointed in a combination position. They'll be trustees, and they'll be community service board, so I have to get the right word, community service. Those new ones are going to serve in dual functions. The ex officios will also serve in dual functions. But as for, and I'm going to use the senior term situation, mayor can take individuals, say, I would like to be the senior advocate, but I would like to be on the board as a voting member. This board can do that. It's just that you're creating 7 slots. 2 of them are similar to what we have at the hospital board. But that's your decision. And that way you get that broader representation, but you decide where they go. And as positions come to reappointment, you can ask the question, or in the recruitment, of serving in that combination position. So you start off with 5 combination positions immediately. And the library trustees that are still serving, they choose to continue with that. They serve out their term, and they'll only be addressing the library side of that during their term, if that's their choice.
Yeah, I can, to speak to Ms. Walker's comment, I don't have a problem in when I get ready to prepare names for consideration by council to include one of those seniors into the voting role. I don't have a problem with
Are
that.
you
because
okay with the 7-member board, 5 and 2
5 and 2?
officio?
Yeah,
2 ex
I'm fine
officio?
with that. And I think that speaks to Mr. Silva's commitment that he made last year to our senior population and our continued commitment to our senior population. I also think that it's going to streamline things. I think, and we have some great members out there that are currently serving, and we have some great members that want to serve. And I think, I think this is something that's going to, moving forward, is going to make things better, especially as we move forward with the new library and such, and more parks and the aquatic center. A lot of that stuff's is really gonna come together and mesh together.
There's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done. So a 7-member, 5 with 2, okay? How quickly do we see this coming together?
We give direction, well, if the council is ready to make a motion, we would give direction now. We have a motion by Garcia, a second by Silva, and that would be to direct staff to consolidate boards. We would dissolve the community services board effective, would that be
With the
June?
ordinance.
Well, you have to draft the ordinance, you have to get the ordinance
Well,
approved.
Well, we have to go through, Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is pull together an ordinance, bring it back to you for a first reading, and then a second reading. You know, there's that time frame. So this runs out a couple of months just because of
Right.
the time frame.
Second meeting in July.
And then you had the 30 days. So we'll look at pulling that together, working with our city attorney. But what I'm hearing in your motion is that you're looking for 5 and 2, and the new appointments would be, it'd be dissolving the Community Service Commission, creating the new 5, but your new appointments would be combination positions. And that's, I don't believe it's an ordinance issue. That's just a matter of, that's how you advertise that you're appointing combination. Marcelo, let's make sure that there's no prohibition that for holding 2 slots that we have to amend in the ordinance. There,
Okay, and then I
Our city
have
attorney say there's
I have a
not.
couple of follow-up questions. Would we then be looking at monthly meetings of this?
For the
community
library
services?
board, we're required to do monthly meetings, so we will have monthly meetings, and we do have monthly meetings.
And I think we're busy enough, and we're gonna be even busier, that we should be meeting monthly.
I would ask that from the date of implementation, that copies of the agendas be provided to the city council, at least for the first several months, so that we are all comfortable, that we feel that all interests are being adequately represented in this combined board. And if not, we unwind it and go back to 2 separate boards.
That's
I
fair.
go further, you should get the minutes.
Yeah, the minutes from, Betsy, I'm sorry, you had a comment about something, and I didn't know what it was.
Oh, I was simply confirming there's not a conflict on serving on both. I checked.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
So,
Okay,
so basically, just so staff understands, we are gonna go into a combined, board, which we're gonna call Community Services Board. That, those 5 members that are part of that Community Services Board are gonna have primarily 3 functions, which is gonna be to provide library, services, or direction on library services, parks, and recreation, correct? And then we're adding the 2 ex officio members, which we need to make sure that's included as part of the ordinance that gets presented to you.
correct.
Okay.
Well,
Just-
and there's a lot of mechanics that we're gonna have to then fill in terms of like staggered terms and
Oh, yes.
all
Yeah,
of that.
and there'll be some internal parts as far as, like I said, about the actual names I bring forward that will serve in a
Dual capacity.
in a dual purpose to address the senior commitment that we've made.
And so your intent is to open up the application process for anyone, for everyone?
For everyone, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Just
all
to-
members of the community services, the expired terms of the library board, and any other members of the community, including the seniors that are here or seniors that aren't here that want to be interested in those positions.
Just a final comment.
By the time we come back with the actual ordinance, those terms will be expired. You can reapply for a position on the new board. Yeah, as well as the 2
Well, that's-
members
that's-
of the current, well, actually, all 7 members of the Community Services Commission can apply for the spots on the new board, as well as, I believe, you and, who was the other library person? It's
Judy
Miss
Hashem
Judy
and-
Hashem, and
Doug
then
Newland
Doug
has
Newland's already
indicated
said he's not
seeking
interested, so,
And that's not any different than you would if you were not making the change. Anytime a commissioner's term ends, you have to apply.
you have to,
Yeah. I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry, Tom.
yeah, but there's still a reappointment process. Every time a term expires,
You have to get reappointed.
you still have to be reappointed.
Right, but Tom's point, Mr. Barrington's point is, you continue to serve
Until
until
you're
such time
reappointed.
as your replacement is
Correct.
named.
Yes.
So,
Yes. So in the case of the Community Services Commission, Mr. Ryan and Mrs. Dodge expired last month, but they are still continuing members because I have not made an appointment to fill those spots.
I guess my inquiry would that be the same for me until you act either.
Correct.
That's correct,
That is correct.
for anybody.
I just want to make sure I have another meeting.
Yeah.
Just as a final thought, the reason that I support the consolidation of this board is because I completely agree with Mr. Duran. I have a relative who's a library director. They've been a library director and a children's librarian in San Jose County as well as in Los Angeles County. And I've had this discussion for years, how the old model of the library has been, the vision of all the libraries in California has been moving to a community service-based center. And I think that there's a potential for a lot of synergy. We have a lot of participation in our Parks and Rec, and they should utilize the library and try to get children more involved. There's no reason why we should have a full summer program for kids and they don't utilize the library during that time. So I think this gives the opportunity to do a lot of cross-promotion between the two, and if we have 5 good members of the board who are concerned with promoting.
Seven.
Exactly.
Seven.
5 voting members and 2 ex officio that are concerned with promoting the interests of the entire community, then I think we can have our services met.
Yep, I agree.
I think a lot of this is going to have to do also with very clearly defining the expectations and outcomes that this council is looking to that board to come
Absolutely.
with, right? And so that's going to involve an orientation process and maybe an opportunity for the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem to meet with the new board and just can talk through.
Absolutely.
We cannot over-communicate the importance of this board, and I think that's something that's been lost a little bit in translation. We have to spend an equal amount of time talking about efficiencies as we do talking about the importance of this board and how we looked, as a council, we look to this board to come forward with very important recommendations.
Well,
that define our actions going forward.
And if I just may comment, I think that that's extremely valuable, and also as staff serving in those boards, because I can tell you that, you know, the times that the mayor has joined us for those meetings, it's been really helpful, because I think it also gives those members of that commission or that board a voice from this council. So, you know, I certainly extend the invitation to you that anytime that you're available to attend those meetings, it shows support for staff and also, obviously, the board. The same thing with the foundation. The fact that we do have a council member that is part of that foundation is very, very valuable. And I think Councilmember Cardenas can indicate that, because it brings your support into the function of these different boards that we have. So that's, I want to express that to you, that that's appreciated, you know, from the staff.
I couldn't agree more, because I think in my experience of this past 6 months of attending both community services and library, and most recently I made a foundation meeting, it does give the opportunity for those members to have a direct access to the mayor or / a council member or pro tem or whoever, to express issues or concerns or, you know, expectations. And so, and one other thing I thought was maybe we could look at, because from what I've looked at, what we're moving to is pretty much standard in most cities. They have a consolidated community services board that actually incorporates the library and Parks, Rec, and all the other things. Maybe we could do a retreat with the new members and bring in somebody that is a senior member of a commission in another city, from San Diego, Coachella Valley, something like that, that can maybe do an afternoon retreat with the new board to kind of talk about what they've done, best practices, expectations, and such.
Again, I'm supporting this with the expectation that the library's voice is going to continue to be heard.
Absolutely. You'll have to with the new library coming online.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion, I guess we're done. There was a motion by Garcia, second by Silva, and passes 4-0. 4-1 with 4 yeses and 1 no. All right, thank you. Okay, well, moving on to item number 12, discussion and any necessary action regarding the city's annual budget, fiscal year 2017. Letitia, all your work is right here.
Okay. What city is that?
I know, but it wouldn't be a bad place to be right now. Like sitting right up here with a, yep. Letitia, you need a few minutes to set up? Do we want to take a quick break?
Yeah, we can take a break.
That way it gives her a minute. We're moving on to item number 12, discussion and any necessary action regarding the city's annual budget for fiscal year 2017. Presentation, Letitia Salcido, our Director of Finance.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Welcome to our third and final, hopefully final presentation for the general fund for the City of El Centro budget for fiscal year 2016-2017. As a recap, we had 2 previous presentations, workshops for the budget. In the first one, we discussed the general fund, revenues, expenditures, fund balance, as well as the challenges. Second workshop, we discussed the enterprise, capital projects, special revenues, and the major funds being the water, wastewater within the enterprise fund. This final presentation is an overview of the budget as a whole. It includes all of the funds, and we'll start with the total city budget for all funds is $100.3 million. It is allocated between operations, capital, debt service, and then our solid waste contract. For operations, which includes personnel costs as well as supplies and services, the percentage of the 100 million is 48% for operations. That's 50 million. We have an allocation for capital of 37% of the budget. Our debt service, that's 13%. And then we have a solid waste contract, which is 2% of the $100 million budget.
Can you comment on how our debt service ratio at 13% compares, you think, generally with
I didn't bring that information, but I know that the majority of it is water, wastewater. It's justified for the improvements
Expansion,
within,
right.
for the expansion. Then we have the redevelopment bonds, which were issued. We had to issue bonds in order to be able to operate the redevelopment agency. And then the third one is our LTA for our street improvements. Again, supported by the revenues from the LTA fund. I'd say,
Does it worry you that we're at 13% of debt for debt service?
no, because it includes, like I said, the amounts for the redevelopment agency, and that was a means of operating that fund. The water, wastewater, we have, as we will review later on, we have sufficient funds to support the debt service for those two,
repayment.
for the improvement. And then the LTA, again, supported, and the revenues are coming in to be able to support, to pay that debt.
Mayor,
Yes.
Councilor, if I may add to that. All of those all those bonds, all that debt is associated with a revenue stream that is not the general fund. Even that successor agency, those are funds that we're gonna go back to the state. So every one of those has been identified. You have water, wastewater, your RDA, and your LTA are all being funded from designated funds that could not flow somewhere else. Because there are some organizations that borrow money for, buying garbage trucks. Or actually, buying fire engines. Well, you have paid your fire engines as you go. So you're not borrowing $500,000 on a lease to buy a fire engine. That's probably a better example. All of those, it's even better than that in that you have dedicated streams that would have gone in for those funds as it is. The LTA, for
Right.
example.
So I very much appreciate your response, because 13%, when I first saw that, I thought that a little bit high, but if it doesn't worry you, then it's not going to worry me.
No,
So-
because it includes all of the funds, the water, wastewater, they have designated revenue streams for the payment of those bonds. With regards to the general fund, budget for fiscal year 2017, as I initially presented in the first workshop for the budget, there was an initial shortfall of $2.2 million. Mainly caused by the $1.6 million, the first line item there, the increase in pension and labor-related cost. This is a major event. The additional amounts that make up the $2.2 million, increase in liability insurance, decline in gas tax revenues, and other miscellaneous, but mainly the increase in pension and labor-related cost. We went back. We were able to reduce the shortfall to $390,000 for fiscal year 2017. However, that was done with the majority of the monies that were used to reduce that shortfall were from one-time monies. That's $1.4 million that was initially designated for other projects. Those projects are now on hold, but we were able to reduce this shortfall within the general fund. We also reduced the allocations, $191,000. It was a combination of a reduced allocation in non-departmental division. And then there was, as a result of the reorganization for the city attorney's division, we had some savings. So combined, there was an additional savings of $191,000. We also, within this budget, froze one vacant position within the city manager's division, and that is a staff assistant. Also, there won't be, this budget does not include the OPEB annual required contribution, and which last year the amount was $183,160. The final general fund budget totals $30.8 million. $4 million of that is the one-time Crookshank expense. The various percentages of this budget, of the general fund budget, the allocation, 70% of that is for salaries and benefits. That's 70% of the $30.8 million. Without the Crookshank, the salaries and benefits would be 83% of the budget. Then we have 15% for supplies and services, and then 15% for capital, with zero for OPEB next year, the annual required contribution. The allocation by department is as follows. The blue slice is the number one, Public safety at 54% with 16.7 million out of the $30 million budget. That's the highest allocation. The second to the highest is public works at 19%. And that public works includes streets, Crookshank, engineering, and then public works administration. The allocation there is 19%, and that's $5.8 million. The third allocation, highest allocation, is Parks, Recreation, and Library at 12%, and that is $3.7 million. Followed by General Government, the yellow slice at 10%, and that is $3.1 million. However, 1.2 of that is the liability insurance for the city. And then the smallest allocations, building planning, that's community development, and then economic development, the pink slice at 2%.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So the entire 100% of the liability insurance is included in general government as
Yes.
opposed to an allocation by, say, FTE or
We
department?
do
or
an
whatever?
allocation, cost allocation, and we recuperate some of the cost from water, wastewater, and the other funds, yes.
There's no allocation to
question.
public, there's no allocation to public safety?
Oh, yes. Well, it's within the general fund. Yes. our
But
liability
for
insurance.
purposes of that graph, and that's why I'm trying to figure out if that's just a little bit misleading, if you take 100% of the liability insurance.
Liability insurance is reflected in a non-departmental within the general fund. So if we were to break it down and allocate the liability insurance to police and fire, this blue chunk would be a little bit higher.
I have a follow-up question too.
Yes.
Just in regards to the staffing, I know that sometimes there's projections there for staff. Are we at 100% in terms of staffing and those positions being filled, or?
Within the police department?
Public
or-
safety, yeah.
Public safety, there's always, within fire and police, there's always vacancies.
What do
And
you think we're at 90%, or what would you
I would,
guess?
okay, for budget purposes,
Budget
everything is budgeted here.
Budget, correct.
Yes.
But it's,
All the positions, all approved positions have to be in the budget.
right.
Yes.
But in terms of the actual staffing of those positions,
That's
is a
always
different
below.
story, is that, that's correct?
Right. And a lot of times, there's savings in salaries, but there's an increase in overtime. So it's give and take.
We could ask the two chiefs,
Mm-hmm.
if you're prepared, what are you not staffed right now, position-wise? 10% legal. 10%? Both? Okay. About 10%.
10%.
Thank you. You're welcome. With regards to, with regards to fund balance for the general fund, we're starting the year with $11.6 million. Then we have the revenues, 30.3 million, and then 30.8 million in expenditures for a net of a decline of 390,000, as mentioned before. The projected ending fund balance as of June 30 of 2017, the end of next fiscal year, is $11.2 million. For the city's financial reserve policy, we have made the following designations out of that fund balance. And the designations are the following. We have a 10% of operating expenditures, which is for economic unknowns. That's the $3 million, the first line. We have an accrued leave liability of $2 million. We have a designation for vehicle and major equipment replacement of $5 million. However, this is one of the line items where we need to focus if at some point we have additional funds and we want to improve the designations. This would be one because the recommended amount here is $16.6 million, which is equal to the accumulated depreciation of the capital in this category. We have also a designation of $1 million for the Crookshank project. And then $148,000 for revenue stabilization should revenues not come in as projected. We have $148,000 to help us out with the budget. We have a total designated $11.2 million out of the $11.2 million projected as ending fund balance for next year. With regards to the enterprise funds, for water, just a summary of their working capital. Total working capital is $9.6 million. And again, based on our financial reserve policy, we have made designations for the various potential liabilities. The 10% reserve, $543,000. We have a designation for accrued leave liability, as well as vehicle and major equipment replacement, $220,000, and then the $4 million. Those are right on track. They equal the amount of accumulated depreciation, as well as the amount of accrued leave liability within that fund. Overall, we have designated $4.8 million out of the $9 million, and we have an undesignated unreserved for any other potential needs of $4.8 million.
Leticia, can I go back to that pie graph real quick, if I may, Mr. Mayor, if I may, real quick? And I apologize, I didn't get a chance to look at the whole packet, but in regards just to Parks, Recs, and Library, that 12%, or the money that we have allocated for the 2016, 2017, is that less than last year, or about the same, or where is that in reference to 2015, 2016 in terms of allocated revenue?
Actually, the allocations for parks, for actually for library, which is included in this category, is a little bit higher for, it was higher this year, and it will be almost the same for next year, because we have an allocation for the demolition of the library.
Right.
Which was very significant cost, and I think we have 170-something allocated for the final cost of that demolition in next year's budget, and then we have a big chunk this year.
So it's not really increased programming, it's more in relations to the demolition of the library and the cost associated with that.
Nothing in services, nothing was cost. As a matter of fact, some of the temporary services, some of that has increased. If there's a decline in any single year, it's mainly from, for example, in 2018, we're not going to have the demolition of the library, so therefore there will be a decline in the allocation to the library. Those funds will be allocated to another division that has the need at that point.
Makes sense.
I believe I was in wastewater. And this slide. Okay, so same thing for wastewater, doing very well at projecting an ending fund working capital of $7.9 million by the end of next fiscal year, 6/30 of 17. We have, again, designated for potential liabilities for the 10% reserve, for the accrued leave liability, and vehicle and major equipment combined. We have allocated $2.1 million, leaving us with an undesignated unreserved for any potential need in the future of $5.7 million. Again, the liabilities here, we have met the full liability in our designation. With regards to capital, this $100 million budget has $38.8 million in capital, and we have allocated that by function. For example, for Public Works, we have allocated $30 million. The majority of those, the capital is in water and wastewater improvements, $16.6 million, as well as street improvements, and then Crookshank taking being the third highest category. We also have an allocation for bus shelter improvements, and then some equipment for streets and for the shop. For Parks, Recreation, and Library, we have in capital $8.3 million. The biggest ticket item there being the Aquatic Center at $7.3 million for construction. We also have two allocations for two parks, and that's $517,000 for the construction phase 1 of Desert Village. And then we have $272,000 for the construction of a Veterans Memorial. This is the amount for that I was talking about earlier, the $162,000 in this budget for the demolition of the old library building. These are the final costs of the demolition. And then for the youth center, a truck with a trailer at $37,000 is the allocation.
Leticia, on the demolition of the library, do we anticipate any additional costs that are maybe unknown as far as asbestos or anything like that that we have yet to determine?
There was a possibility of that, and I discussed with Marcela, and the allocation here in the budget kind of includes a little,
There's some cushion there?
a portion
Okay.
for that.
Thank you.
Can I just add a comment on I did speak to Mr. Duran about this, and I asked about the $272,000 set aside for for the park, the Veteran Memorial, and I asked where the estimate for that came from, because it seems like a pretty high number to have, and I wanted to get a sense over how do we come up with this estimate, and I think the expectation is that it's going to come in much lower than this. And I like to suggest that when drawings are made and we're able to come up with a better cost estimate that comes to the council, that we can, ratify that. Because again, I think the initial $272,000 came from a different location, different site that would have included other costs that may not happen if we have it over at Buckland Park.
Correct.
So this is a high estimate, but I'd like to get a closer estimate when the time comes and we're able to get some definitive numbers.
And to speak to that, I have a meeting, is that tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow with Abraham and staff regarding the documents, and we're preparing to release an RFP for that. So we should have some pretty solid numbers within, are we putting it out for a shorter term, right? A couple weeks, or what's the term that we're putting it out for? Yes. 3 weeks. So in about 3 weeks, we'll have a more defined answer.
And quite frankly, if it comes in at the numbers we think it has, then we'll be well under this number. If it comes in above that number, we'll be coming back for a full bid process.
Yeah.
So we're trying to also keep the project moving right along so we can have it done very quickly. So thank you, Mr. Campos.
Okay. Then for public safety, we have an allocation of $412,000. That's for safety equipment, cameras for patrol vehicles, as well as the remodel of the evidence room. For just various departments, actually 2 other departments, $4,000 just for computers and scanners. This category is very slim this year due to the tightness of the budget. With regards to, as you know, the city has the strategic planning program and goals, and those are 5 goals. We have transportation and mobility, safe neighborhoods, recreation and lifelong learning, business development and city beautification, as well as resource sustainability. This budget meets those goals. For example, it meets goal number 1 for transportation and mobility with $10.6 million for street improvements as well as operations, and then the bus shelter improvements. We meet with this budget, goal number 2 for safe neighborhoods at a total cost of $17.1 million, which includes operations as well as capital. When we've discussed the capital previously. Goal number 3, recreation and lifelong learning, $12 million. For operations, 3.7, that's parks, recreation, and library. And then we have an allocation of 8.3 million for capital overall. We met goal number 4, business development and city beautification, with an allocation of 611,000. That's our landscape and lighting districts, light elimination, and economic development. We also met our 5th and final goal of resource sustainability with 20.6 million allocated, and the majority of that being the water wastewater improvements, 16.6 million, and then the Crookshank at $4 million. And this presentation will not be complete without going over the challenges. We have reviewed some of those challenges.
Just stop there, Letty, we're fine.
So I went over some of these challenges because they all refer to the general fund. And, but as a recap, they are the shortfalls. Number 1 is the shortfalls and the declining fund balance. It is a concern. As you know, this year, as a result of budget adjustments for capital replacement, increase in pension labor costs, we had a $2 million gap within our budget. For next fiscal year, as I already reviewed, is we have a shortfall of 390,000. That we initially had a shortfall of $2.2 million. We were able to reduce it to 390,000, but we clear that shortfall with one-time revenues, and one-time being the keyword here. What happens is that operating expenditures are of an ongoing nature, and there is a gap between our revenues and our expenditures. So this year, we were able to cover that shortfall with one-time revenues. If next year we don't have any other revenues to cover it, there's going to be a shortfall again next year of $2.2 to $2.5 million. We also have, and that's a major concern, we also have capital projects that our facilities, some of our facilities are aging. For example, our police station, it's old, it needs to be updated to meet current standards, and the estimated cost for that is $25 million. We also have, as you know, we haven't replaced our library building, which was torn down as a result, or being demolished as a result of the earthquake of 2010. The estimated cost for a library is $15 million. We have a need for additional parks. It is estimated that it's approximately 100 more acres that we need within the city. And finally, Crookshank, it's an ongoing project. We have $5 million in the budget, $4 million and then $1 million in designations, but it could be up to $6 million, and we still don't have the final number on that. So that's an ongoing concern. We also have aging fleet and equipment. Our trucks, patrol vehicles, service vehicles, they have to be rotated out on a periodic basis. And we had started doing that, however, because of the substantial increase in pension costs and other expenses, the amount available to be able to replace this capital has shrunk. And therefore, there's going to be a need to replace these vehicles in the future or get into some type of rotation plan. Also, we have, as I mentioned, we're building an aquatic center, and the approximate operational cost for that center is between $600,000 to $700,000 for a full year of operations. We're estimating maybe at the end of 2018, fiscal year 2019, that's when we're going to have to come up with these additional funds to be able to cover this facility. If we operate for half a year, that still would be at the highest $350,000 of additional revenues that we will need to cover the operations. Also a concern, it's increased workers' compensation costs. As I mentioned in my first presentation, the fund balance in this fund has declined from $6.3 million to $2.7. We are getting more claims for the city, and that's depleting our reserves as we cannot charge. For example, the general fund cannot afford its full allocation of this cost, so we're using the basically reserves to make up for the difference. CalPERS increase in costs, very significant. Just between 2017 and 2018, the increase is estimated at $1.1 million. That's in 2 years. We need to come up with an additional $1.1 million to make up this gap. And then the increase in labor commitments, personnel cost increasing. And also, I didn't place it here, but the request from citizens for additional services, additional facilities, we need to take all that into consideration as we move forward and as we look forward into our finances. Because what happens is these are very substantial challenges and concerns, and if we don't bring that budget into structural balance, it's going to be very, what is the word? What am I looking? Very
Austere.
Austere. Thank you. Exactly the word. Very austere.
Yes, sir.
And the only way to be able to move forward would be in such a situation would be to dip more into our fund balance, which is not recommended, or reduce the level of services and then or cuts or a combination of everything. So very, very substantial, very, very important challenges that we need to that we take into consideration now. We took into consideration when we were working with this budget, but we also need to keep considering our options as we move into the future and future budgets. So those were my challenges. But in summary, that concludes my presentation. So in summary, we have a budget that meets the city's strategic goals, but that has many challenges coming up.
Okay. Questions from council? Mr. Silva?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Letty, for an outstanding job. You always do that, and
Thank you.
giving us a reality of things and preparing us for the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes cities get into difficulties for not being proactive and not looking realistic into the future, and so you're doing that for us, and we know the challenges that we have. I want to add one more challenge. to what you just described.
Oh,
If you looked at the budget, one of the line items that was significantly reduced for next year, that's our special events budget. That is being proposed to be reduced 50% from $40,000 to $20,000. And staff tries very hard to go out and fundraise that money as best as we can. I'd like to recommend to the council that we at least match the budget that we allocated for this year, which will take it up to the $40,000. Because at $20,000, we're not gonna be able to do the special events that the city is known for and that our community enjoys and gives an identity to our city. And those are our Mardi Gras, our Grito, our Christmas lighting tree, and one that we started last year that it's not a significant cost because it's really relatively minor, modest cost, would be the Dia de los Muertos. And at $20,000, we will only be able to do one. We'll probably only end up doing the Mardi Gras parade, which is our signature event, but nothing else. I will tell you that I have a pretty firm commitment from 4 agencies that have committed to sponsor our special events at almost $20,000, which would make up the budget that I'm asking that we increase for this. Those are pretty firm commitments from people that are coming, and that would alleviate some of the deficiencies that we're seeing. So I think that that's important for the city, it's important for our citizens, it's important for our community. It gives us a sense of identity because no other community in Imperial Valley does the kind of events that we do. And even at $40,000, that's just bare minimum. It doesn't really come close to what we could be doing. And so I like the council's indulgence in doing this. I also wanted to comment on in our El Centro Vision 2050, we talked about a feasibility study for a convention center in El Centro. And the more I talk to people, the more I keep hearing that this is probably not a long-term project, it's a much shorter-term project, but I think the prudent thing to do would be to do a feasibility study, which may run us somewhere between $50,000 to $60,000. I'm not proposing that we budget that now, that's a lot of money, but I am proposing that if the budget for the Veterans Park comes under cost and we're able to fund a feasibility study out of potential savings from there, that we do that when the time comes. And hoping that that would allow us to do the feasibility study, because I think it's important. I think El Centro is getting close to, our demographics to seriously look at this. So I'd like to ask the council's indulgence in those 2 items.
I think in regards to the feasibility study on the convention center, that is something that I've also heard quite a few people that have spoken to me that are in support of the sales tax increase have kind of have some linkage with that and have said, what a great way to spend some of that additional revenue is to look at some kind of a convention center that would bring some business to Imperial Valley and El Centro specifically. So I think if all goes well and our sales tax initiative passes in November, I think that's something we certainly should probably look at, because I think as well as obviously we have our police department, library, and parks that we're going to address, we'll probably be looking at some of those other projects like a convention center, and I think at that point that would be the time to expend funds on that. As far as the special events, I don't disagree with you that our residents have become maybe a little spoiled that we do these events, and it's a great thing for our community. When you said you're talking about you've got some commitments for sponsorships, is that $20,000 in addition to what you're proposing to increase that budget?
I'm proposing that we increase the budget to 40 and match what we had last year. And the sponsorships that I've been promised would go back into and replenish and those funds. So,
So if
because, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so if you were to bring in all 20, then that 20 would come back out and go back into wherever else we need.
Mayor, before you leave this subject, and just
Yes.
for clarification, because we had built up a bit of a deficit in that fund, in this budget, we're also wiping out that deficit. We're making the adjustments on the books. 'Cause we spent the money, but we've been holding this $50,000 deficit for a couple of years. We're gonna go ahead and extinguish that credit because the monies never did come in on those fundraisers
Right.
4 years ago. They didn't come in the way we wanted to, and that was right during the recession. So one of the intents is to add the money in, the extra 20, extinguish that deficit, and clearly, if this funds comes in, we roll that 20 back into
We
that
roll it
fund.
back out. How does council feel about that?
Well, are you saying that, so we would go ahead and move forward with the adoption of the budget, but make it conditional that it's backfilled with the promises or the sponsorships?
No.
No?
I think the ask is for finance to try to find another $20,000 to put back into the special events line item, with the caveat that if Mr. Silva is able to bring in the sponsorship commitments that he has, then we would roll that $20,000 back out of that fund and put it back into the general fund or wherever.
Fund balance where it came
Fund
from.
Fund balance, correct.
So basically, it would be the 20,000 plus a 50,000 shortfall of, that's been carried over in that fund, so 70,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the
From fund
50,000 has not been, but
No.
hasn't been put
So-
in yet.
No,
Gotcha.
that fund has been carrying a 50,000 shortfall for the past 3 years. Well, it's been increasing because the contributions have not been coming in. So if we're going to, might as well include with this 20,000 allocation, 50,000 so we can clear that fund.
Clean the books.
And it will come from the general fund balance. Okay.
Okay.
When, and I believe I heard, Mayor, that the RFQ or RFP or RFI regarding the Veterans Park, we would know within when, the next 2-3 weeks?
About 3 weeks. We'll say 30 days.
Okay.
Because we're going to probably release maybe this week or first part next week, and then you figure 3 weeks on that. So give it 30 days.
Well, I guess I would turn maybe the inquiry back to Ms. Salcido on how you felt about the request, and do you believe that we should increase that fund by 20,000? I know you and your department have worked really hard on this, and you put together a budget, but how would you feel about that increase and us asking for additional 20,000 to cover that event for that particular fund?
For the special events?
Yes.
We can do it if it's something that the community needs, if it's something, I mean, those programs, they belong to the city, that we've taken property of those events, and that's the wish of the council.
I think it'd be, especially something like the Christmas tree lighting, I think would be devastating to a lot of families and kids if we were able to deliver on that. And there's certainly a large contingent of our city and valley, for that matter, that is very attached to the El Grito. So I mean, I think there's some ties there that we want to hopefully continue to meet that commitment that we've made to our citizens as providing those services.
I have some questions. I agree. I think that it certainly defines us as a city. It's a big quality of life thing. I think we get complaint from time to time, there's not enough to do, but we know that there's more than enough to do. I agree. I think that that's an excellent recommendation, and I fully support that. Ms. Salcido, I did have a couple of questions with regard to the budget, starting on page 119. Oh, sorry.
Just, Mr. Garcia, did you have any comments on that one issue?
I
Oh, I'm
agree
sorry.
that we should definitely keep those events going on. They do define our city, and they're always extremely well attended, and a lot of people look forward to them, so I would definitely go forward with that.
Okay, so I think we have concurrence on the council to move forward with that. Letitia?
Thank you.
So page 119, under the projected budget for the city attorney office, what I found interesting is projected for 2016 personnel services of 317, let's say $318,000, supplies and services 118,000, and then we essentially flip those for next year. Why are we anticipating supplies and services to go up 313?
Because professional services, legal, the contract basically with our outside attorneys goes under supplies and services.
Okay, so that's where the compensation.
Yes, personnel is just salaries for in-house attorneys
Okay,
or in-house for staff.
okay. I think that we're gonna wanna track this very carefully, because one of the considerations in going with outside counsel was that we would greatly reduce the amount of money we were spending on the city attorney's office. So I
Okay.
think we'll want to be tracking that on a quarterly basis, being reported back to council with regard to that.
I agree. Good catch.
Next question is on page 131. This is, and it's just a small amount of money, but I find it kind of interesting under fines and forfeitures. Under court fines, projected 2016 is $25,000, but we're budgeting that to go up to $90,000 in 2017. See where I'm at, 440101.
And we had 105,000 in 16.
In 16, it varies. This one is very, it's not static. I don't have a trend.
Just depends on what's going on.
Right, but I'm just a little worried if our projected is gonna actually fall to 25,000. How confident are you that we're gonna bounce back to the 90,000?
There's always savings in other areas that can make up this. So I project, at this point, I'm being optimistic.
Okay.
Yeah. Bottom line.
The last question, and I can't find it. The amounts of money that we allocate for like the IVEDC, for Chamber of Commerce, for, where are those funds captured?
We have
Yeah,
in
it's
various
really-
funds, we have 5,000 in the city manager's budget. We have about 8,500 in economic development.
So it's kind of scattered all around.
Scattered.
So I guess what we want to know is what is the combined total, and how does that compare to prior years? Because one of the things that I think this council is committed to is ensuring that we know what that amount is and making sure that we're following or tracking those contributions. Okay, perfect,
there you go.
perfect. And this is just spread throughout, right?
Yes.
Okay,
So as you can see,
But some of that is CDBG funds, right?
so for like,
Yes.
yeah, the Catholic Charities.
Charities, yeah. So it looks like the actual allocations that come out of probably a general fund would be air show, chamber,
the chamber,
hospital
Freedom
foundation,
Fest.
film commission, IVDC.
city manager has 5,000 for various sponsorships. City manager, for PI, we have PI, Water and Wastewater Fund, the Air Show, the Freedom Fest, the Chambers, well, we don't have the score anymore. In non-departmental, we have $3,000 for the Chamber. In economic development, we have 8,500, that's for the Film Commission, IVEDC, SBDC. At least that's what it's been in the past.
Those numbers, we did not reduce this area.
No,
Correct. These are the
no,
same
none of
ones.
these
Where's
were
the
affected.
allocation from PAL coming from?
That's gotta be PDs.
PD.
For
That's-
PAL, that's asset forfeiture, and it's 25,000 next year.
That comes out of PD's budget. Bless you.
For HUD entitlement, we have 25,500. In the past, it's gone to Catholic Charities, Woman Haven.
Very far.
So the big difference, because we see we had a pretty big chunk in 2015,
The
but that's
score.
when we also had the 25,000 for SCORE, but we're still 50,000
Well, we
below.
also, isn't that the year that we also had the F-16, or was it F-16?
The strike team.
The strike team?
team.
That was another 25,000. Where's that
No,
at?
that was 20.
I
Oh,
thought
we
14 was
split
10.
SCORE over 2 years,
Or
14 and
we have,
15. The strike fighter was only 10,000, I thought, right there.
Where's that at?
IV, United Strike Force, and that was 2014.
Oh, there it is, okay.
I
Is that
believe the
because we had a-
allocations
I thought we did
in
more than that.
2015 were higher, Women Haven was higher, child abuse prevention was higher.
Yeah, but that's all CDBG money. So, so is the 76,000 down from a peak of 134, is that primarily because of a drop in CDBG funding and the absence of the 25,000 to score?
Yes,
Looks like it, yeah.
yes.
Okay.
It's three items, score and the CDBG, which previously was the child abuse prevention and Imperial Valley, Press Valley
Woman Haven had a
Challenge.
huge chunk that
No,
year.
wait a minute, let me-
Okay.
A follow-up question on that was, I know that we had allocated for 16, the $1,000 for SBDC, but then with the,
Change.
the change or the, yeah,
Change.
change, didn't we give direction not to release those funds, or had we already released
Ms. Pietro,
those?
you would like to speak to that?
It's still on hold?
Yes.
Okay.
they've done- Yes.
Okay, so that wasn't expended this year, and we're not sure, I guess they're kind of trying to get back on track for next year, so.
And when will we have more certainty with regard to Crookshank? I mean, that number floats.
Terry, Mr. Hagan, I think, and
The cleanup,
there's a meeting tomorrow, Thursday, I think.
are we gonna know sometime soon if it's 4,000, or 4 million versus 6 million?
I think that information is coming up probably in the next couple of weeks, I'm assuming. I know they opened bids, and if I remember, the bid opening was, I want to say around between around 4.5, if I remember correctly. We haven't heard from the county yet on what direction of award. There hasn't been an award, there was a bid opening though. And there were some discrepancies as far as I know in the bids, so they're still evaluating what they're gonna do in order to move forward.
But to clarify, was the 4.5 million, was that for a portion or all in?
Over,
All of it, right?
all in.
Oh, good.
Yes. But
Okay,
Mr.
well,
Campos,
I
am I
mean, not, oh,
correct
good,
that
but-
that is a quantities? Until they actually pull it all out, we
Correct.
won't know.
Right.
It could be less for us, more for the county, evenly split. But there was testing done. We think it's close, but until they finish, we really won't. That's why
Right.
the extra million is parked,
Yeah.
because we're cleaning up a big thing
Right.
that 1938 dealt with.
Sure.
But I'll come back, I'll send an email on the low bid on how much it was, because I'm a little bit cloudy on that. But what I do know, and something going off of Mr. Duran's comment, is the bid spread on the opening was very large.
Wow.
So to a factor of 2 from the top to 1 to the bottom. So that might mean that there's some things that some bidders are looking at, the others are not. So till we don't finish the project, we don't know.
Okay.
Have we had any further follow-up from Senator Wessels' office from the meeting that we had regarding Crookshank?
No.
No? Have we just kind of been the squeaky wheel at all and sent a couple emails and said, hey, what's going on, or have you found out anything? Because, if we kind of just let it go, then it might get lost in all the other things that they're trying to do, but I'd like to kind of keep kind of be up in their face a little bit to keep that pressure on to hopefully maybe find some kind of relief.
Yeah, he was mainly looking for a loan, though. That's what the
That's what he
direction
was
he was
offering.
giving us.
I think it was
No
also.
grant money.
He also offered a loan to the county, and the county's, well, loan's not the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah,
Is,
okay.
revenue stream, but we'll look at it again with them. But I think as we get this number down, we'll start getting a better comfort level on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Chair. Anything else, Cheryl?
Those were my initial questions. Thank you.
Okay. I had one question while we're on 131. Our anticipated business license, we're anticipating a drop in business license of about 15,000 from projected 16. What do you attribute that to? And, because that seems somewhat significant. And with some of the new businesses coming online in construction, I was just wondering, a $15,000 drop is maybe.
We had some, we've been doing a lot of collections this year, so I believe this number is higher than normal.
So
This is
some
not a
of the
recurring-
actual from 16 might be back licenses that we've recovered?
Yes,
Okay. Okay. Questions? All good.
Mr. Silva? Mr. Garcia? Right. I just want to say, Letitia, I think we say this every year, great job, but I think this year has been obviously more challenging than the last few years. And thank you for you and your staff, Richard and everybody else, there, for all your guys' dedication and work. I know you guys put a lot of hours in, and finding a couple $1 million laying around is not usually the easiest thing to do, so
Thank you
appreciate
for your
it.
patience.
Yeah.
I think what I really appreciate is the holistic approach to the budget. It includes our strategic plan. It also includes the accomplishments from prior year. It's a very forward-looking document on what we want to achieve in the years to come. So, very well done.
Thank you.
Mayor, before you
Wait,
leave this, I want to
wait.
take a special thank you to the staff, finance staff, and the departments who assisted in this, because there was a real cooperation, as in past years, but again, of making this work. It's not just a matter of, well, finance put some numbers together. It's a collaborative effort with all the departments. We're trying to figure out how to make this work, still deliver the services the best way we can, and then delivering a balanced budget. It's never easy for anyone, particularly finance director, to come in and say, well, we need to draw some monies from the reserve, because that's not what we try to do. In '09, we cut that 2.2 million right out of the budget. We've never added it back in. So it's been very tight. And lastly, it's a recognition that's in this document is the GFOA budget award. We're the only one in the
Right.
county, and
And
there aren't that
CSM
many
as well.
in the next county next door that has those. So that's a big
That's
issue.
huge.
But when you have citizens say, well, I don't understand all of this, have them read the letter. The Associated Owner Staff help draft that letter, and I mean, they draft 99% of it, and I add my piece to it. But if they read the letter, it will tell them what's going on and what those challenges are, and that will help them look at the rest of it. But I think those 14 pages are important.
Yeah, I agree, and in my meeting with Letitia, she made it very clear that all the department heads had come together and worked to make this happen. So thank you to all of our department heads for understanding the situation we're in, and hopefully we're moving to not have such a tough year in 18-19.
Well, I think one of the things we talked earlier about the presentation to be made to the El Centro Chamber of Commerce, and perhaps what we need to do is lead in with the budget,
Yep.
right? And explain some of the challenges, because there have been letters to the editor in the paper that have kind of said it's not so much a revenue issue, it's an expense issue, and you should be looking to cut expenses, and I'm thinking, where?
Yeah, where do we cut?
Where is that gonna be, unless we start?
And the fact that we were able to manage to balance this year's budget with one-time expenditures, and that the problem is going to compound next year if we don't address it now.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm ready to second the motion, but I just want to make sure the motion includes the modification to the special projects line item to special events.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, so the motion, Cardenas, second by Silva, and that is to approve the annual budget as presented with a modification of $70,000 from fund balance transferred into special
Right.
events.
And it's a resolution.
You're right, Resolution 16-41.
41.
Thank you, Letitia. Okay. Motion by Cardenas, second by Silva.
Yay!
Passes 5-0.
Great job.
Okay,
Okay.
moving on, new business. Item number 13, discussion necessary action regarding the selection of a fence design pattern for the Dogwood and Interstate 8 new bridge.
Thank
Mr. Terry
you,
Hagan.
Mayor and council members. Back in August 5th, 2014, council directed Engineering Division to work with the Caltrans to establish landscaping along the Dogwood Interchange corridor area. Direction was also given to look at entrance monument options along the area. Caltrans moved through various possible locations for placing an entrance monument. However, due to site distance limitations, none were recommended by Caltrans. Instead, Caltrans proposed beautifying the fence along the pedestrian walk on the bridge. And they came up with some different options, a plank road, lizards, and the sun. Staff took a look at this with the Community Enhancement Task Force, and direction was provided to have Caltrans provide revised designs for the fence. The lizard option was discarded, and a city logo or a Welcome to El Centro legend in the fence was requested to be added. Caltrans moved forward with that and was not able to fit the city logo or the lettering as it would not be properly visible to motorists.
So that one I found really perplexing, Mr. Hagan, when I saw this item come up on our agenda, because any of us that have traveled along I-10 see every other
Palm Springs,
Coachella,
Palm
Palm
Desert.
Springs,
Yeah.
and I counted up the letters. It doesn't seem like there's that many more letters.
But it-
Desert Hot Springs.
I don't get it.
But in those, it just has the names of the city, it doesn't say welcome to.
Could they fit
So
El
welcome to
Centro?
El Centro, that's a lot of letters, I
But
do.
could it say just El Centro? I mean, that's kind of what I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
Well,
It
as we get into these options, some of the crossings you're talking about, like Palm Springs area, those lettering drop below the fence area. So I believe they're just working with the fence area, which is, what do you think is about?
Well,
6
some of them
feet
are
tall?
incorporated
I
in
thought
the
Maybe 6
fence.
feet in height.
I thought in the report, the issue with the El Centro was that it was just too many letters.
I believe that's it too.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be legible on a 6-foot height
Right.
But
lettering.
and I agree with Cheryl, as I drive up there all the time, as you got, specifically, you've got Desert Hot
Desert Hot
Springs and
Springs,
Palm
yeah.
Springs, and it's incorporated in the actual fence.
In the fence, and I believe the lower part of the bridge too as well. I believe the lettering is higher than 6 feet.
In Indio and Coachella, it's incorporated in the actual concrete of the bridge, but on, what is that, the last turnoff, to go into Palm Springs or Desert Hot Springs, that's actually on the fence, on the, I don't know, 6, 8 foot fence that goes along the bridge, the top of the bridge.
Well, we could go back and ask again. I would recommend that we pick one of these options, A or B, and then go back and ask. You've got the plank option. Of course, a lot of people driving through here may not realize the history of the plank road.
No.
And then there's this option with the Ocotillo, the Sun, and Mount Signal, which is much more decorative, I think.
Better, but.
And we could go back and ask to insert the lettering El Centro possibly.
If I may, I'd like to add to some of that. I'd like to give maybe a little bit of additional background. It's, we're a little bit in a time crunch because there's two components to the Dogwood project. One is the actual structure and build. What's going on right now will be completed as part of by October, basically. And the fence is part of that contract. We can't build this regular fence on top of the bridge. It's gotta be, we've gotta make a selection right now because the contractor needs to order this material. There's a second follow-up contract that'll happen after the construction. Right now, Hazard has the construction of the bridge. The Caltrans will put up a separate contract for additional landscaping that'll be in the slopes. And it includes rock landscapings of different patterns, additional vegetation as well that's drought tolerant, of course. So it'll be not just this that you're looking at, but at the end product will be this plus the whole landscaping. Some of the limitations with a shield, one of them, the option with the City of El Centro logo, and it's where you put it big enough that it's legible. And some of the options are in the concrete, but again, that's part of this contract. It's already laid. The concrete's poured for that. If we do additional letters, welcome to City of El Centro. With Caltrans actions, it probably is going to require some additional review by the structures department to review the bridge and how that's going to be anchored and whatnot. And one side of it is already constructed, so it's kind of retrofitting what's already there. So the option that Caltrans is giving us to work with is just a fence at this point.
Why can't we, if we're on a time schedule and we can't do the lettering in the fence, why couldn't we do the city logos on the sides, on the concrete, and they could be, instead of what do you want to call it, molded into the concrete, because obviously it's too late. Why couldn't we do something in essence kind of like, a after production type deal that's inserted or put on both sides.
One concern I would pose is maintenance, and we're gonna be on the hook. We already have a landscape maintenance agreement with Caltrans for whatever we do. And what you can see here, it's pass-through, so it's difficult to graffiti. So it's, I mean, they can.
Yeah, well, and
but-
I think we also look at what's happened with the logos that are under the 4th Street Bridge. I
They're
mean, they're
faded.
difficult to
Yeah.
maintain, they're faded. So, I mean, of the two, I really like the option B. I think Mr. Hagan's right. I think, you know, those of us that have lived here for a long time understand.
Can you
what
show me
the
option
concept
A again? It was hard to read on the,
Option A is the plank.
is the plank, that's
Okay.
it. But I really, really thought that where we were looking to Caltrans to come back to us was simply El Centro, just like we see on 10.
Yeah, and apparently that's option is really, Caltrans went back and forth. We've been having dialogues with Caltrans for months now on this, trying to push onto that, and they are basically saying no. I told them, you know what, same reason, to me it makes sense, you know, I go through the I-10 and
Yeah.
I mean, you go
Right.
bridge after bridge after
Right,
bridge,
right.
and the letters are there. But like Mr. Hagan was saying, those letters are offset from the bridge. They're mounted, they're big steel letters that are not accessible to somebody graffitiing. If we put them on the fence, you're adding a solid surface to graffiti. Because you got to think about it, not just from the fence, from the freeway side, but on the pedestrian side. So on the pedestrian side, they'll be right next to the sidewalk to graffiti, and the city's the one maintaining it. If we put it on the fence, and just the size of the lettering would be a big solid surface.
Well, if these are our two options, I certainly prefer option B to
Yeah.
option A.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I would choose option B. I think it kind of reminds me of the overpasses when you drive into Yuma. They're more decorative. They don't necessarily just say Yuma. So I think it's add a little color to it. And I think that graffiti is already such a problem in the city that we definitely don't want to put a big shining target on our new overpass.
We still have on the next interchange, which is Imperial. We'll lean hard on them to get our name up.
Thank you. I mean, because I hear
2025, right?
I hear that a lot, is why do we not have some bigger welcome to El Centro signs as people are coming through town? We could do a much better job of trying to get people off the freeway, come visit us, or at least understand that, oh, this is the El Centro that I've been reading about.
Yeah. Okay, so I think you have direction. Oh, we have, this is actually an action.
You
Yep.
go back and tell them that we really want it to say El Centro
Okay.
on the other one, but we'll settle for B.
So motion by Garcia, second by
Thank you.
Silva, passes 5-0. Okay, item number 14, consider adoption of ordinance and resolution to place on, place ballot measure on the November 8th, 2016 special election to increase sales and use tax by 0.5%. Presentation by our city manager, Mr. Duran.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask, Ms. Zarate to come up. She actually wrote the report, and, but I wanted it to come from my office, for a simple reason, it really, until it becomes an item, until it's before the, as a ballot issues passed, it really doesn't go over to finance, and that's why I wanted it. Liz, do you have that? Okay, I'm sorry, that you had it. My apologies. It's, I all of a sudden now, I put her on the spot, and that was not my intent. But she worked on this while I was away playing. Did look at it from a number of wonderful spots in north of Canada. But she did the lion's share of the work with our finance director and our new city attorney. Liz, why don't you go ahead and talk about this?
Okay, so what we did was, we prepared a report that council requested a half-cent increase. We gathered documentation and looked at what other cities were doing, compared it to what we had, and prepared a report, basically. And an increase in a half-cent for sales tax would actually give us an approximate annual revenue of 5.5 million additional revenues. And we would not receive that first initial 5.5 until July 2017. So we wouldn't start seeing the sales tax from that until then. At the moment, these revenues would help, of course, increase city services such as, police, fire, library, parks, all the things that we need, right now. Right now, there is no election for us this year. So if we were to move forward with this, we would have a need to call a special election, and that would be for the November 8th. So what we need is for council to call a special election. In order to do that, we need to request all council members to vote on this item to be able to move forward, as well as, I believe that would be it, correct?
Yes, thank you. If you have any questions, that's why I asked Ms. Duarte up. It's, you saw in the budget and the challenges, and without a significant increase in revenues to the city, it's a long haul to those increased services. And by the way, they're direly needed. Pick one of them, any of them, all of them. But this would also give us that assured revenues that are associated with bonding for those big projects, because that's what would be required. And while it's not specific to those projects, this is not a specific tax, it's a general tax, those projects just could not move forward. And any questions for myself or Ms. Duarte, who worked on this, or the other staff who worked on this also are here?
Questions, Mr. Garcia?
No, I don't have any questions.
Ms. Walker?
I'm just going to lay this out here so there's no beating around the bush. I support allowing the voters to decide if they want to tax themselves. I cannot support this unless we put a sunset clause in there. Because if you read this and says we're going to continue until repealed by the voters, there will never be an organized voter get-together to repeal this. And so I think with just about every other sales tax measure, we see a sunset clause where voters then, new time, they get to decide, are we going to continue this or not? So I would like to see if we're projecting 5.5 million, if we have a current estimated shortfall of $40,000, 25 million and the 15 million for the two big replacements, right? So we're talking 40 million, 5.5 million per year starting in 2017. If we had a sunset clause on this of, say, 10 years, because
You also got to consider the 100 acres of park.
well, yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not developing some kind of ginormous fund that is going to be used for things that are not truly what our intended objectives are. I mean, we've gone out and we're going to be going out to the voters to say, we need $25 million for this, we need $15 million for this, we need additional $600,000 to $700,000 per year operational costs for the aquatic center. Okay, fine, but at some point,
Mayor, I guess it's one where the bond, if we're going to build these buildings, you're talking about 20-year bonds or longer. We're not going to be, we don't recommend issuing all the monies right away. So some will come out staggered because we don't want to pay interest while money is sitting in the bank. You're talking about at least 30 years then. This is not a short-term one. And as for your operations costs of that new library, that new police station, and police has indicated they need, in their studies, another 10 officers. This goes out a long ways. This is not something where you wind up, well, in 10 years, we can drop back down. The answer is, if we're not going to do that, then we shouldn't build those buildings. It's a serious commitment to, that's all, it's just, I don't want to forget the operational costs. There's going to be a challenge, and I don't want this council to be caught in a bind. That's all.
but I see it a little bit differently. I see us as having a monumental need for two facilities that we are not otherwise going to be able to fund, ever. With the legislature taking away redevelopment and our opportunities to raise revenue, severely limited. The increase in sales tax is one of the few ways that we have to raise the money necessary for those two facilities.
But we also have to take in consideration a $2 to $2.5 million shortfall annually for probably at least the next 3 to 5 years.
How do we know? How do we know that the economy's not going to improve? We see more and more retail businesses opening. We see more and more homes being built. We see everything, every sign indicating that the economy is coming back.
But I don't think we don't have a revenue issue. We have a cost issue with things like PERS. I mean, is something that we can't control. I don't think, and speaking with Letitia and looking over our budget, our revenues are, I mean, we rate what in the top, was it top 20 of cities in California in sales tax revenue? We do great
Okay,
when it comes to revenue.
wait. But I think that number is a little bit misleading. Because we rank and.
Per capita.
And per capita.
Per capita, yeah.
Okay, I mean so take a statistics class in college and they tell you that you can lie with all the statistics that you want, right? Mr.
But I think
Grasser?
my point is
Because
that
the
it's
point
not a revenue,
is
though.
that our sales tax is grossly inflated because we have 60% of that sales tax being generated by folks that don't live within the county. So of course it looks high. But if the objective is for voters to embrace a sales tax increase, I just think we stand a better chance of selling that to the voters if we have a sunset clause on it, as opposed to just saying it's going to continue for forever.
I think we need to really pay attention to what Mr. Duran was saying, in that if we look at the objectives of this increase, it's to build infrastructure and to grow. But it's also to operate the infrastructure that we've already gotten funding for. So this infrastructure and growth is going to cost money into the future for a long time. And I think that we're setting ourselves up to fail if we do put a sunset clause in 10, 15 years when these buildings need to be operated, when they need to be expanded on.
But that's assuming that we're having a flat growth in any other revenue source, and I think that's not accurate.
What's the economy bouncing back at? 2%? I think it's someplace between 1.8 and 2%. Let's say that projects over the next 5, 10 years, and that, I mean, it's a very, very slow recovery. It's the slowest we've ever seen since the Depression.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure that we put all of our eggs in the basket and say, well, in 5 years, we're going to be flush with cash because the economy is going to bounce back 100%.
Well, I'm not suggesting a 5-year sunset clause, but I am taking into consideration the folks that have raised issues or concerns with regard to us moving forward with one or both of these. And that is that there's no time that it's
But,
stopped.
you know, I have to look into the future, and that's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can also think about what this council or future councils will be able to do in the long run with additional revenues like this. Because we will be able to do what we're planning to do, but if that revenue continues, future council will be able to do other community improvement projects that are going to benefit the community.
Convention center. Convention center, for instance.
Yeah, convention center, for
you know,
example,
something
or
like
other
that.
things. So I think I'm in support of the ordinance as is. I'm comfortable with the 8.5. We're not the highest in the county. We're still comparable to other communities. And I think this is gonna benefit El Centro for many, many generations to come, so I'm in support of it.
And again, I would just rather see that we go back to the voters like we did with Measure D and just say, look at all we've been able to do with street improvements. Do you want us to continue that tax into the future? And we gave a new set of voters, we gave a new set of taxpayers the opportunity to have a voice.
Wasn't Measure D a 20-year?
40-year.
40-year. What was the first Measure D? Was the first one 20 years? First one was 20 years, and the second one was 40.
I think 20.
Because, like Ruben's saying, is you've got to be able to bond that money, and you're not going to bond it for anything less than 20 years. Otherwise, it doesn't pencil.
Okay, I'm just saying, I think that it's an easier sell if we have a sunset clause in there. I'm okay with a 20-year sunset clause.
I will say, you know, I've had some calls from different community leaders, and one specifically, and I meant to call him today. I hope he doesn't get mad. I'm going to say his name, but he said he was actively going to be a proponent of this. Jaime Honold, past president of the chamber, called me and said, I'm 100% behind this because I was 100% against it in Yuma. And Yuma, I think they raised it 2%. And he said that he was against the increase, thought it was going to hurt business and such. And then he saw what the city of Yuma did to transform their city in parks and creation of convention centers and on and on and on. And he says, because of where I was and what I've seen, he goes, this is exactly what we need in the city of El Centro. And I think that speaks volumes for a person that at one time was,
Yeah.
you know, absolutely against it.
And again, I don't disagree with any of that. My only itch is there's no end.
Well, at some time, you never know, it might be going back and asking for another half
We
percent.
might.
I will say this too, and I think this is the world we live in because of the elimination of RDA. All the cities are seeing that this is the only way they can make it work. And I think, I have no idea what the stats are, but from what I've seen, this is probably going to be the largest number of cities going to the voters asking for a sales tax increase, probably in the history of this
Absolutely.
state, because there is no other way to make the books work. And I can tell you that the majority of the cities that I've talked to, they're all going 1%. And so I think we're continuing down the line of being fiscally conservative as a council and as a city. We're not overreaching. We know what we need and where our numbers lie. And I think we're asking for the appropriate amount. As far as a timeline, I'm not sure. I think, you know, I certainly don't want to sell us short. And when we're looking at 20-year bonds and the fact that we would definitely, as Mr. Duran said, we wouldn't be asking for the entire bonding all at once. So if we even staggered some of that money 5 years down the road, you're looking at needing at least 25 to 30 years.
Right.
So-
I wish I had heard from the El Centro Chamber and a more definitive opinion or recommendation, because I think that's going to be important for the election process. If the business community and the chamber rallies against this, that will be a huge uphill battle. So I wish they had given us a better recommendation.
Mr. Cardenas and I, you know, presented at the last chamber board meeting, and I'll give Mr. Cardenas a chance to kind of add to this, but I think the consensus among the board members that were in attendance that were they weren't against it, and they understood, and what I said was, if you're okay with where we are as a city, status quo or less, because if we look at a continued deficit and we have to look at potentially cutting services or making cuts as far as staffing and all the things that none of us want to do, then don't support it. Go to the ballot box and vote against it. If you want to be that city that we all talk about as far as offering the services that, you know, everybody says, God, I wish we were more like Palm Desert, or I wish we were more like some of the cities in San Diego County. Here's your opportunity. Here's your opportunity to go and give the city or give the council the opportunity to have that extra funds to bring in those things like better parks, a library, police department, updated services, more police on the street, you know, more firefighters, all the things that we need that increases the quality of life. And and ultimately it's going to be the people that are going to have to speak to it. All we are doing is giving those people the opportunity to speak to it. But my comments and my position from now until November, if we all agree to put this on the ballot, is going to be, this is what we are, and this is what we'll always be, or worse, or go and give us the opportunity to give us 50 cents on every $100. Is anybody going to miss 50 cents on every $100 to spend? And to your point, 60% or better is not El Centro residents that we're collecting that sales tax revenue from. We are in a unique situation. I mean, the city of La Quinta is doing a 1% increase, and they're not even gonna be close to the amount of money we're gonna raise on a half cent.
Where
Because
will that put them?
that's
8.5?
gonna bring them, the 1%'s gonna bring them about 3.5 million.
But no, would it take
think
them to 9%?
9%.
9%, yeah. City of Coachella did a 1% increase last year, and they're at 9%. And somebody else is doing.
Lexico's at 8.5 already.
Lexico's 8.5. Betsy, somebody else in Coachella Valley is doing a,
I've lost track. We had the list last
Yeah.
month, but yes.
I thought maybe you might know since you're up in that area a lot. Oh, I'm sorry? Yeah, I mean, it's just, and I think it's just
But she has a
statewide.
slide, she can show you what those other cities are. Thank you, Leticia. I knew you had something on that, I appreciate it.
And Mr. Mayor, while she's putting that up, I do want to say that, I am also in support of this. I think I've probably been the greatest critic in terms of building economic infrastructure, and I think this is a way to build economic infrastructure is through this sales tax initiative. We have those 60%, and I know our mayor talks about it, and so does Councilmember Villegas Walker talk about the fact that 60% of this money comes from outside folks from our city, but it's still our police officers and our police department that have to respond to those calls. And the only way to really build and gain additional revenue to serve that extra 60% of the people that are coming is through the regressive tax of this. So, I personally would like to see us move forward. My only question, and this is my first rodeo with this ballot initiative, is just a call of action and how we would market it. I did ask Mr. Duran what would be the role of council, what would be the role of staff, and he outlined it with some talking points. And again, I'm supportive of this, but I'm also supportive of a comprehensive action plan on how we're going to share this with our community and build support. I do have to, congratulate in the efforts of Measure K. I think they did a really good job in kind of sharing and doing their roadshow. And I'm hoping that we're just not going to go out there and approve this, spend the money on putting on the ballot without a action plan. And I'm ready. I'm here ready to do some of the heavy lifting on that, but I just don't know how that's going to take place and then make sure that we don't have any missteps when it comes to campaigning, quote unquote, for this ballot measure. So my concern, Mayor, would just be that we have a clear, comprehensive action plan on how we're going to share this information with our community and why it's in our best interest. I think your PowerPoint did an excellent job. We broke the ice, but there has to be a pretty aggressive campaign strategy behind that. And I'm ready, and I'm personally ready to help. I just need to follow somebody's lead.
No,
And if I can respond to that, yesterday I sent out an email to all the council members with all the information that
Right.
you need.
Thank you.
That is your do's and don'ts, and that's,
And hard copies were provided.
and hard copies
I
were handed
agree.
out.
And I think if council decides to move forward, I've had a number of people in the business community that have stepped forward and have actually asked, including Mr. Honnold, to be a big part of a committee to, just like we've had with Measure D, where there was a committee of people that went out and kind of did the circuit, did the Rotaries and the Kiwanis and Seroptimists, and maybe we do some town hall meetings and such. But I think it speaks volumes to have somebody of the caliber of, say, Mr. Honnold, because he's a past president of the chamber and speaks for, well, I shouldn't say speaks for a lot of people, but he represents a lot of people in the valley as far as having his businesses here. And there's some others too that I've spoken to in the last week that are willing to come forward and serve on a committee of such. We also have some businesses that are willing to contribute some funds, because obviously, as you know, we can't spend city funds to promote a ballot initiative. Just like Measure K was basically funded through parents and such that supported that. So we have some businesses that are already committed to contributing funds for a get out the vote or educational side of this measure.
Mr. Duran, you've heard my concern with regard to a sunset clause.
Yes.
So if you were going to make a recommendation,
I'm going to actually look back to our finance director on Issuance of bonds, Ms. Cecilia, if you want, would you come, and, because we're doing this at the podium. Our Measure D bonds were issued for what, 20 or 30?
30 years. Most of the bonds, actually, all of the bonds that we've issued are,
It's a range.
yeah.
It
I-
seems to me the earlier the bonds were adopted, the shorter the time period there was.
I know the LTA, the water wastewater are 30-year, the 07s RDAs were 30 years, but I think the LTAs are 20. However, I had the debt service for the water wastewater for 30 years, and it's 52 million, at 3.6 to, it varies, 3.6 to 3.9, almost $4 million. And my concern is if we bond for 20 years, the debt service will be a lot higher. Also, the 5.5 million revenue to be generated by this 0.5% of increase is basically half of what we get right now. It could be lower. There's a possibility. So we want to have some type of cushion, have to be able to pay our debt service, but have a cushion just in case revenues don't come in as projected. In having a 30-year bond, you have a lower debt service versus if you have a 20-year bond. So that's my only concern with that.
And I appreciate you did a sunset on the Measure D, and that was I think the community saw that as a good thing. We just don't want you to wind up, whoever that, 20 years is a long time, or 20, 30 years, is that, oh, wait a minute, we can't operate that facility, or we can't cover those positions. For example, what happened on your utility tax back in the 90s, I think some of you were here, all of a sudden you lost several $1 million, as I recall, or like losing the RDA, all of a sudden you had this contraction that, well, maybe the voters will reinstate it. Well, the utility tax wasn't reinstated. City of Brawley is going through that now. They did a short term. What they found is the economy still hasn't risen, and they're coming up, I think, in 2 years on that contracting back again. City managers, it's one of the things we always talk about is our budgets, so that's why we're aware of it. And that's all, is whatever your decision at the end is, the influx of cash will help build these projects. As long as it's understood, there's an operating side that just goes on. And I hope the economy comes back a lot stronger. You know, we have kids that need jobs, and we need those jobs to occur here. But that economy is just creeping back so slowly.
Also, remember, any improvement in the economy and subsequent improvements in revenues have to first cover the shortfall. We have a $2 million shortfall at this point in time. With new facilities, starting with the aquatic center, that's 600 to 700,000 on top of the 2 million. So, and there's the workers' comp and all of those things. So any improvements in the economy, first and foremost, have to cover the shortfall.
Yeah.
And deteriorating capital.
Does it require 4/5 approval or 3/5?
Requires a unanimous vote for each of these three tax measures.
Unanimous?
Because you're in because you're in an off year for your council election.
So, well, go ahead, I'll defer to our mayor. I was ready.
Well, if I can, Mayor, so if I finish with that, is
That's 5-0, right?
whatever you adopt, we will certainly make it work with us. We just are trying to avoid the surprise when someone else asks, well, how come you cut us off at this point? Well, because back in 2016, this really made sense for how we did this, as opposed to, well, no, it was really considered, and we thought things would grow a lot faster. As long as this discussion occurs, it's your call
Yeah,
again.
and my response would be, 20 years from now, if the council is doing what it promised would happen, and the people were absolutely content with the status of their city, they're gonna vote to continue that tax. I was here when we went down in flames with the utility tax.
Thank you. I wasn't sure.
Absolutely went down in flames. I was the public face out there. It's before I sat on council, and went out, and we told the citizens what would happen. We told the residents of El Centro what would happen if that utility tax went away. And not only did it fail by a little bit, it failed by a lot. And essentially, the residents in El Centro said, don't care. And what did we end up doing? We ended up temporarily closing Fire Station 2, closed the library, the Parks and Recreation, and essentially it was the backlash by the city against the community that got me to run for council, because I was so upset with the way the city responded to the community saying, we're not gonna support you on that utility tax. And I just think it's so important for people to have a voice. I think putting in a sunset clause holds us accountable for using the money for what we say it's supposed to be used for. And I just think that we have a better, a better chance of marketing and selling this if we tell folks that we're gonna come back to you. Hold us accountable, because in, 20 years, 30 years, pick a number, folks. We're gonna come back to you, and you're gonna see that we've been held accountable to do what you told us to do.
If we can use it as a measuring stick, I was just looking at Measure K, at the first initial results. I mean, it has overwhelming support. It's over 60% support, with the first notification. So, again, I think, and, I think our city is saying, hey, we do need to invest in our infrastructure, and the fact that they proved to be very successful. I think, again, moving forward is important, knowing that we need a unanimous vote and understanding council member very valid concerns. But at the same time, I'm ready to move forward regarding a sunset clause or not. Well, I'll kind of defer to everyone else, but I'm ready to move forward. And
Well-
it's very encouraging on Measure K too.
Yeah.
Are you
Well-
okay moving forward without a sunset clause?
Okay, so what year, how many years were,
30.
30? Okay, I'll support that.
Is that, Letitia, you think that's okay as far as bonding opportunities?
And clearly, in our projections, as we go forward on projects, trust me, I won't be here, but I'll be 97.
None of us will.
Is that we'll need to look at those to ensure that we plan for that if it stops. And that's an important element of it. And I think that's what was missing in 1991. They weren't starting to plan for, well, what if this goes away? And I think that's all. We just don't want the surprise.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have a problem with it at all. I mean, I just want to make sure that we don't sell ourselves short and we come up to a situation where we run out of years. And if you think we can get everything done, and I understand the staggered funding source, so 30 sounds reasonable. I think we can get everything done in 30. And I agree. And I'll tell you, I was very, very upfront with the chamber. And I said, because the question is, are you specifically allocating this money to X, Y, or Z? And I said, no, because then it makes it harder. You've got to have
Larger threshold.
supermajority basically on that. I said, but I will tell you that this council is committed to these projects, and if you don't see them in the next 2 and 4 years, I fully expect every single one of us not to be sitting here. And I said that, and Mr. Cardenas was there when I said it.
Absolutely.
And that's just the reality of it. I mean, we have needs for this city, and if the 5 of us can't deliver, then we shouldn't be here.
Right.
So, Mr. Garcia, are you okay with
I'm
the?
comfortable with 30 years. I
30
was
years?
concerned with the bonding issue, but 30 years seems fine.
Yeah, okay. So we're all good on 30 years?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
do you want 30, excuse me, 30 years from the effective date, assuming the measure passes, which is November 18th of 2016, or 30 years from the date the sales tax was collected, which is 30 years from April 1st of 2017?
That seems like a very complicated question.
I like the second one because it's a little bit longer out there. But
We can issue bonds.
we need to put a date into your ballot, into the ballot measure.
So I guess it'd be 30
Itself.
years of actually collecting money.
So until
April.
So
it would
April 1st,
end on the last day of
July
March.
1st, actually.
July 1st.
July 1st, okay, July 1st of
Yeah.
2017?
Ms. Salcido confirmed that would be OE.
July 1st?
So it'd be through June 30th of 2047.
Okay. Mr. Garcia, you good?
That's fine.
Yes.
As you look at the ballot measures, there's one additional correction. It's section 2529 that will be, it's probably my typo,
What
that will
page
be
are you on?
revised.
It's on ordinance A.
It's on the ordinance.
Okay, but what page of the
It's on
agenda?
Resolution 16, packet page 420. This is the
420.
ballot measure as it will appear in the ballot. It appears in each of the resolutions. So there'd be 2 changes. It should say 25-29, and that should say until June 30th, 2047. And those two changes would be made in all of the ballot measures that are contained in each of the resolutions that support this action.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's just a typo.
You may, yeah, it's my typo.
It's a
probably.
typo and then the adding of the actual
Correct.
date.
And you may also wish to read the ballot measure to make sure it expresses what you want to express to the voters. This is what they see. You're limited to 75 words, and you are required to provide the maximum amount to be collected annually and the term of the tax.
So are we having that, I know you got a motion, Mayor, so are we gonna have to amend then, or are we asking for an amendment?
The maker of the motion can add the amendment the suggestion by the city attorney.
Okay, so I'll defer if there's any other comments, but I'm willing to amend that, but I just don't know if there's any other comments that need to be made in relation to the amendment.
So the motion is to move forward with the ballot initiative with the additions or changes or corrections submitted by our city attorney. And there's a second by Mr. Garcia. I think we've just given a couple minutes for full council to read the language before I call for a ballot. Everybody's good? Okay, motion by Cardenas, second by Garcia. Please ballot. Passes 5-0. Okay, moving on to item number 15.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we have
It's
four
the whole
other.
bunch of resolutions.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. There's all the,
Next four resolutions, though, will have to be hand or by vote. They won't be done electronically.
so we'll do a hand vote or a voice vote? Okay, so we'll take them one at a time. Ordinance, what was that, 16-42?
1605. The ordinance that you just voted on was 1605.
Oh,
The
five,
next
that's
one is
right, the other one's a
resolution
resolution.
1642.
Oh, yeah, I got it right here.
So B is 1642.
Okay, so then resolution is 1642, which is item B. We need a roll call vote.
I need a motion and a.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Motion by Silva,
Second.
second by Walker. Roll call. Are you gonna do a roll call, or we just,
We can just say.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number C, resolution 16-43. Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion, motion by Cardenas, second by Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Resolution 16-44. Need a motion?
So move.
Motion by Walker,
Second.
second by Silva. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Resolution 16-45. Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Cardenas,
Second.
second by Walker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Good? Okay. Now we'll move to item number 15. Consider adoption of ordinance and resolutions to place ballot measure on the November 8th, 2016 special election to increase the transient occupancy tax, otherwise known as the TOT tax, from 10% to 13%. I'm assuming that Mr. Roddy is also presenting.
Yeah, and before you start, it's actually, you have two. And I think if there's a discussion of both of them, you can decide on which one.
Correct.
Direction you want to go.
At the request of Ms. Walker, we added both alternatives.
Thank you.
So go ahead, Mr. Roddy.
Okay, so we bring both items before you. Item number 15, the TOT tax proposes to increase from 10% to 13%. And that's one increase total. And this increase would provide the city with approximate annual revenues of about 480 in for new facilities. It would enhance services that we're currently operating on. As the same with the sales tax. This one would also require us to move forward as a special election. It would require all 5 votes to move forward with this one. Item number 16 is gradual in annual increments. So what would happen with this item is the first year, it would move to 11%. Second year would move to 12 in 2018, and then in 2019, it would move to the 13%. Ultimately, the amount, the revenue collected would be the same. It would be the 480. Same process for this one. It would also require the 5 votes in order to move forward for a special election in November.
Questions?
Mr. Mayor, I maybe I'd ask Ms. Villegas Walker to comment a little bit on the, did you request on the second one? And can you maybe provide some background on that? And
Again, if we're looking at the end game, which is voter approval, I just felt that perhaps it would be more palatable to the voters if they saw this as an annual increase of 1% increments as opposed to a 3% increase at one time. So, especially if we're going with the ancillary ballot measure to increase the sales tax, I am a little worried about voter fatigue when it comes to raising revenues and people starting to aggregate what we're doing with the TOT and the sales tax and giving us one but not the other, or just saying, okay.
And I mentioned this at the last council meeting, that I do think that's gonna happen. I do think that people, whether that's fatigue or misunderstanding of the ballot, are going to be confused. And so I had some serious consideration about this one just because of that reason. I think that placing them both on the ballot is going to confuse people and ultimately end up not supporting one or both. However, I'm not, being that it requires a unanimous vote of the council, I'm not going to kill this, but I am concerned over that.
in regards to just the cost, and I think you've already answered this, Liz, it's the same cost whether we put one ballot or both of them on there, is that correct?
Correct. It is correct. Yes, it's 37,000 approximately.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Did you get feedback on this?
Yeah.
The two component, or the two approaches?
and I gave both scenarios, and, you know, this is probably the easiest one. Everybody's just like, yeah, 3%, 5%, you know, whatever, because everybody I talk to, this doesn't affect them at all, for the most part, you know, because this is all the out-of-towners, people that are traveling, people doing business here. So the normal citizen, everyday citizen, this affects probably a couple percentage of our community, maybe with relatives or whatever staying in a hotel. For the most part, I've had absolutely no pushback on this at all. So I don't know that it makes a difference. Even I think Mr. Tyler kind of indicated today that apart from a couple of the hotels that have kind of said, we're not really in favor of it, which, you know, kind of stands to reason with them, but he said that he's had no pushback and everybody's been on board with the 3%, so.
Yeah, the other reason why I thought maybe in annual increments is because with as much traveling as I do, 10% is about the highest TOT that I've seen. I mean, they add in resort fees and a whole bunch of other things, but that was another reason why I wasn't necessarily interested in a 30% increase all at one time.
Did we, Letitia, did you have a slide, or I'm not sure if Liz or somebody has a slide on the TOT taxes in the areas? I know Calexico is at 10, Brawley I think is at 8 currently. But I think I saw something where some others were, yeah, there you go.
Yes.
So Palm Springs and Indio are 13 and 13 and a half, Indian Wells.
4%, is that Barbara Worth, or whatever they call it now?
That's county, I don't know what
I
they're
don't
at.
know. No, because Barbara Worth is actually, yeah, it's county. So I don't know.
There may not be any.
I don't think there's a hotel left in Hopeville, is there?
No, but I don't think I don't know if the county has a TOT tax. I don't believe so.
Give them an idea. Anaheim's 15.
You say Indio is,
But on top of that, well, you know, you
Resort
travel
fees.
as much as I do. On top of that, you've got resort
Right,
fees and,
right.
and all the
Anaheim
BS
is
that they're doing that stuff. So some of those numbers are probably more like 20%.
Yeah, that's true.
I had a conversation with a couple people. There was an argument. I think a couple of the hotel owners came in and spoke last time. And I think the point was, and I think you like I said, you travel as much as I do. Never once have I ever called a hotel and asked them what their rate was and then said, oh, by the way, what's your TOT tax?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that because of that.
Yeah, so I don't think it affects anybody, but obviously, we're looking for the consensus of the council. If we'd like to move forward on item number 15, which is just the straight 3%, I would need a motion. Or is there any other comments, Mr. Garcia?
Well, I've spoken to some people that own hotels, and they're not really concerned with an increase of 3%. They don't think it's really going to affect business. And again, I've spoken to other citizens, and they know that this is basically not going to affect them at all. This is out-of-town money that's going to be coming in. And I think if we do a good job of educating the public in that, I don't think it'll have a.
And I think the other thing that I tried to get across to the chamber board was cumulatively between the increase in TOT and the sales tax, we are just barely getting back to 2009 numbers of the RDA money that we lost in 2009. So, and I think that's going to be a very important educational part of this, because there are some out there that think that we waste money, and that, you know, we're flush with cash and we're so irresponsible, and I'm just like, tell me where we can cut and we'll cut. But we all know, everybody in this room, at least most of us, know that we are running as lean and mean as we can, and there's no place else to cut.
Yeah, but that's inside looking out, and that's not the perception,
Yes,
right?
and so I think
Which is why, again, I really think that a graduated, if we tell people it's gonna go up 1%.
But I think that if we do a good job in explaining this, and our voters understand that this would have no financial impact on them, it's just for visitors, I don't know that they're gonna have a heartburn over going straight to the 13%. The graduality, I think, may affect if it's coming out of their pocket, where they would have to build in. So I would be in support of just going to the.
The gradual thing might actually confuse people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe could I ask or make an inquiry, if we were to go to a gradual, what type of communication is involved and administrative costs in terms of, you know, sharing with the community that this is going up from, 10% to 11%?
Well, you wouldn't notify them anymore.
We wouldn't have, there would be no notification process involved?
Well, if you will, if I may, our finance director, this program is administered by the city, not by Board of Equalization. So those are sent here. Our staff will notify all the licensees that collect TOT of what the rate is coming up in whatever fiscal year that is. So if it's a one move up, we notify them several months in advance. If it's multiple years, then that date going forward, we keep notifying them, here's your new rate, and we look for that in the collections.
Now, is that done out of courtesy, or is there a statute behind it?
It's part of our, the city regulates that, operates it, administers it, and collects it, and audits it. This is not a state function.
When was the last time we actually did a successful audit?
Yeah.
I mean, and that was something else that this council has said, is if we are gonna move forward and recommend to the voters an increase in the TOT, then we darn well better make sure that we're doing a good job of making sure that we're properly accounting for the collection of that tax and that it's being paid to us. So do we have a plan in place to make sure that that's going to be
I
accomplished?
believe so, and here's where some of the changes, starting with our new city attorney,
That's all around
is
town.
we had an issue with several companies. We're looking probably 2 to 3, because we just did it 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years out. But in that process, we're gonna be taking a different approach, particularly with these outliers. They were very small ones, of how we're gonna audit that and actually taking them, if necessary, all the way, including, well, they'll pay for the audit if we have to go that far. Where we really didn't get that traction on the last one. Well, one is, you understand, is that even on these audits, we don't collect enough out of those to break even on. It's a compliance audit, it's really what it is, because the big companies all comply. We don't have a problem with them. It's these outliers
Right,
that'll actually cost us more, but we are planning for that this next time around, where we want to be able to make them all comply.
Well, and I think that has to be part of the communication piece. And I think that one of the things that was communicated to us last time is that they found it very difficult to be able to produce the documentation that the city was requesting right? In terms of how much had been collected, how many nights, the stay and all of that. And then we got into the whole, right, wasn't there a whole bunch of subpoenas or
We
records
started down that
requests
path,
and all
but it
kinds of stuff?
didn't go as the way we looked at it. Again, the major ones, not a problem. All that information was provided, was
Right.
produced, and we received it. It's really the handful of the smaller ones that we struggled with.
Well, I mean, as long as we have a plan in
Yes,
place to address it.
absolutely. That was
then that's-
reviewed with the finance director and I, and with our new city attorney about how we can go forward with that on the next round, because I don't want to have that repeated.
No.
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Mayor, before you vote on this, there is one additional component. We built into this, in addition to checking for the types of provisions the city manager just described, and your ordinance does have them, we added in the language that a number of cities have added to pick up TOT on the complete value of online bookings. You may not have a lot now, but should you get a convention center, I think that you will. We also added some other conforming changes that, for example, you can't collect TOT on food provided by a hotel. There's a case decision that came out rather recently. So we tried to bring you up to now at the same time as you went out to the voters.
Okay.
Good, I like that. All right.
So, Mr. Silva, I think you and I were the outliers a little bit on this, but you're feeling comfortable with the 3%, so that would be 15 versus 16.
Right.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Garcia, Mr. Cardenas?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, what would we be proposing? I know there's two, but
15.
We'd be moving on 15, if there's a motion and a second, we'll move on 15 first. If that
Passes, we don't
If
have
it
to go to 16.
passes, we don't go to 16.
Okay.
I see a motion by Silva.
I'd just like to, it says 14 on my screen.
Oops. Oh, it says, at the very top, it says voting on 14.
Oh, because this says
That's the old one.
sales tax. We need to forward to item 15,
Oh, I'm sorry.
TOT. And then
you're
we'll
gonna do
ask,
the individuals
yeah, we'll
again.
ask Mr. Silva and Mr. Cardenas to remove and second. Well, she hasn't go hold it up yet. Mr. Silva?
Oh,
Move?
voice? Yeah, I move.
No, you need to,
Oh,
now you can move it. Okay, move. Mr. Cardenas?
Got it.
Okay, now please ballot. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
We need to go through all the numbers here. So ordinance, that was ordinance 16-6, is that correct, Diane? Okay, so now we have resolution 16-46, need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Cardenas.
Second.
Second by Walker. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item C, resolutions 1647. Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Garcia, second by Walker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution 16-48. Need a motion?
So move.
Motion by Walker.
Second.
Second by Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 16-49. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Cardenas, second by Silva. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? None. All right, we will not take item number 16 as item number 15 passed. So we now move to informational. I'm sorry.
Can we, just for the record, vote no on it? So my program will
Oh,
work.
okay. Can you call it up then and we'll,
I'm sorry, we can do what?
Vote no on 16.
Oh, okay. So a
The
motion
motion
to
is-
To deny.
not,
Aye.
a motion to deny item number 16. Is there a motion? Motion by Silva, second by
I've tried 15
maybe,
times now.
maybe Walker. There
There
it
we
is.
go.
All those, please ballot.
Wait, I gotta make sure this is 16, right?
Yes, this is to deny item number 16.
You're denying.
Okay, so it's,
Vote yes to say no.
Oh, yeah,
Vote
exactly.
yes to say no.
yes to say no, okay.
This is why some ordinances don't pass. because
Yeah.
They tell you vote yes to say no. Okay, item number 16 is passed at 5-0. Okay, now we'll move on to item number 17, which is an informational item, which was our community task force minutes. Item number 18, successor agency redevelopment. Oh, we do have item number 18.
We need to-
Financial consideration. We need to adjourn to successor agency.
Yes, please.
So we will do so, and come back to Ms. Piedra for item number 18 as your successor agency for the city.
Yes, thank you, Chairman of the Successor Agency. Actually, I have to tell you that I'm very pleased to present this project to you. Since we lost redevelopment, I know we've been talking a lot about, the loss of funds. I have probably seen the most impact to the loss of a community with RDA when it comes to housing.
Yes.
And as you pointed out, and obviously this is kind of a companion item to what you approved as item number 9, which was the submittal of a grant application to the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program, which is a program that's funded through the state, through Cap and Trade. For us to have the ability to submit a joint application with a developer that has done tremendous work, not just in our Imperial County and obviously the city, but throughout the state of California, we're very fortunate that we have the opportunity to submit a $10 million grant application that is not just for an affordable housing project, but also to assist us with infrastructure, which is obviously very, very important for a community of our size. So what I have before you tonight under our successor redevelopment agency is a consideration to provide $500,000 from the $1 million that we set aside back in 2006 when we had our redevelopment bonds. And basically, this $1 million is the last of money that we have available to us to do an affordable housing project. And so we're working with Chelsea Investment Corporation, which has done 2 very beautiful, successful projects in our city, which is Las Brisas, which was opened back in 2013, and also Countryside, which has been, operating for a number of years. And we have an opportunity to submit an application under the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, which is due June 20th, and that's why we're bringing this item before you, to consider $500,000 from this $1 million that we have available. In essence, the project that we're considering for this is building 54 affordable housing units that are targeted to seniors. Again, much needed units that we need in our community, basically for targeted incomes, which are in essence low income. The recommendation from staff is that we set aside or commit this money based upon Chelsea receiving the full necessary funding for the project, which the project is estimated to be $14 million. It requires the payment of prevailing wages. Obviously, we're looking at state funding for this, and then also tax credit money. But we do have gaps in this project, and therefore we're asking for consideration for the $500,000 under successor agency. We do have a representative from Chelsea here to answer any questions you may have relating to the project. But again, very pleased that we have this opportunity to consider this, given the lack of funding that we have for affordable housing. So if there's any questions that you may have regarding the item or any questions that you have for our representative from Chelsea, we can respond to those.
Okay. Council?
So this is contingent upon the project being approved?
Basically receiving 100% of the financing. They're looking at different funding sources, tax credits, obviously the money from the cap and trade. What they anticipate is by the end of this year, probably October, to release award announcements. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll know if they are successful in getting that funding. And of course, they're applying for other funding sources.
And just so folks know, you may remember that SCAG went up and specifically spoke to the Strategic Growth Council, because when we went through cap and trade funding last year, even though the SCAG region represents almost 50% of the entire state population, we only received roughly 14% of the cap and trade funding. And so we went up there and kind of suggested that that wasn't a very fair allocation. So we're hoping that the proposals score much higher this year and are actually successful in bringing some of that funding back.
That'd be good.
That'd be very good. I'd like to make a motion that we approve. That's very exciting.
Yes, it is.
Motion by Walker. Second by Silva. Any other discussion or questions? The applicant is here. We appreciate you sticking through it.
A lot.
We did a lot better than I thought we might do, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Motion
you.
passes 5-0. Congratulations. We look forward to that project.
Very much.
Okay, we'll come out of successor agency and we'll go to public comments. I have no speaker slips. Is there anybody from the public wishing to address the council? Seeing none, I'll come back and ask for task force reports and council member reports together. Mr. Silva, you want to lead off?
Yes, thank you. Earlier at the beginning of the meeting, you all may have given a letter that was submitted by somebody by the name of Hector Gonzalez, who purports in his letter to have met with me in my office at IVC and gave me some information. I've never met Mr. Gonzalez. I don't know who he is. We've never had any meetings in my office, so I just, for the record, say that it's a little bizarre, the content of the letter. But I attended the IBEDC General Assembly session over at Club Locu a few weeks ago. Very informative. I also participated with the Imperial Mexicali Binational Alliance meeting at IVC. So I was wearing dual hats that day. I attended our league dinner at the Barbara Worth Country Club. And also I was asked to be a keynote speaker for the high-tech high school graduation, which is an alternative high school in El Centro for students that have dropped out and wanted to go back and finish their high school education. And I was very pleased to represent the council and our community with that. So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Mr. Cardenas?
Yeah, just very, very busy last couple of weeks. First of all, I wanted to share on behalf of our mayor, I attended a Blue Lives Matter project, and they did a very special celebration for our police officers, the veterans group, or the Veterans Global, the Vietnam Global Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion. What they did is they just invited all our police officers and fed them lunch. I had the opportunity again to appear on behalf of our mayor, presented some really great recognition, and basically said, hey, we have your back. So the entire veterans surrounded our police force, took this very nice picture, and it's really a testament to the leadership of our police department and the fact that they recognize them and are very appreciative of all their work that they do in our community. So congratulations to our chief. Also attended a parent celebration with the Centro Elementary School District. In October of this year, they're going to be opening up a parent education center right across the street from Kennedy School. So I think it's really neat. I think there's only 2 in our county, but El Centro Elementary is really moving along when it comes to educating parents and getting them involved.
Is that on the other side of 6th Street?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then also I asked Councilmember Villegas Walker if I could share this, but there is a forum for the IVT ride, and I guess there is some confusion as far as how this is going to work, and different just people not really clear on how this is going to take place. But there is a opportunity for them to come to a public workshop. It will be held Thursday, June 16th. I have a flyer. I'm hoping that maybe we can post it on our city Facebook page or even share it. It's on there?
It's on already.
All right, great.
And I think hard copies are out and around.
Excellent.
This is on it.
All right. Also attended our El Centro Lodge memorial celebration. I don't know who wrote our mayor's speech, but he said he wrote it. But very, very nice speech and a well-attended event. I attended that along with Councilmember Villegas Walker, and very nice event to be a part of. And then the last thing is I attended the grand opening of the Imperial County Public Administration Area Aging. Marcella was there as well, and it's good that they're in the city of El Centro, so it was a really nice event. And so again, looking forward to some of the exciting services that are going to be here in El Centro. So that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
Some of you may have heard there's a significant announcement at ECRMC yesterday. We have a new CEO at the hospital who will start on June 27th. And so Mr. Silva and I have spent a great deal of time involved in a search that was pretty much nationwide, and the new person who will be coming to the hospital is currently working in Colorado, living in San Antonio, but again, will start on the 27th. So since the last council meeting, yes, had an opportunity to participate in the ICTC IBEDC General Assembly. Also had an opportunity to attend the California Women's Lead event in San Diego, where was essentially elected women from throughout California coming together to see how we can better position women, not only for elected office, but also to succeed in business. That was pretty cool. Let's see here, also went to a human trafficking event that was sponsored by the Department of Social Services on the 25th. Attended the ICTC meeting on the 25th as well, where they went over the budget for the coming fiscal year, 16-17. The league dinner, which was really a lot of fun, that was great. Attended the Elks Lodge event on Memorial Day. I believe Mr. Cardenas was there. I want to congratulate the mayor on your speech. It was very, very, very well done.
Thank you.
On the 31st, I met with the SOS group over at the community center, again, to talk a little bit more about the issues that the seniors are facing and what their expectations are from the city. So I'm glad that we move forward with the consolidation and a particular focus or emphasis, yes, on addressing the senior issues. Let's see, plans are underway for the Harvest Bowl for the Pearl Valley Food Bank. And then I also attended an asthma financing workshop looking at a regional approach to asthma programs within Imperial County. I will be in Santa Ana Wednesday through Friday attending a SCAG strategic planning session. And then on Sunday, Monday, I will be at USC attending a demographic workshop. So that's what I have.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Mr. Garcia?
I attended a signing of an accord between the Mexicali courts and the Imperial County courts regarding child support services. That was held at our county building here in El Centro. I also attended an informational meeting for the food bank and getting ready for all their fundraisers and all their programs. They're kind of getting all their ducks in a row to try to get some financing to help combat some of the hunger that we see in our city as well. And last but not least, I was a guest reader for a children's story time that happened at our own library. And actually, it was a very well-attended event. We had a lot of little kids there that were anxious to use the library, and they actually had to have 2 different reading sessions because of it. So that was sponsored by the MAG Coalition.
Excellent.
Cool. Very cool.
Okay, so.
Mr. Mayor, before you you say your comments, I just wanted to add, I was kind of reflecting on today, and I want to say how privileged I am to be serving with this council, and I think that we all have a focus of improving the life of our citizens, and we're able to have healthy and productive discussions among ourselves and be able to work together. I think that's something that benefits our community. So I just want to say that I'm very privileged to be serving with you in this council.
Can I piggyback on that? Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I do want to welcome our city attorney, Ms. Elizabeth. You have already made a splash in our council, but it was great having you in closed session. It's great having you on the dais, and I appreciate all your input and everything that you've already brought to this council.
And I appreciate very much working with your staff. It was extremely easy to help get out this agenda, which was a big task for them.
So first, I'll say I agree with Mr. Silva, and I feel honored to lead this group this year. I think collectively we all show that we want to do what's best for the city, and I certainly enjoy serving with all of you guys, and am very much enjoying this year as mayor and leading us. And so, thank you for that honor. Attended the Community Services Commission board meeting. The library board meeting and foundation. I kind of knocked out all 3 this last 2-week period. And I'm trying to get around to all the commissions and try to be there and support our staff. I had a meeting with the post commander with American Legion 25, spoke to him regarding the Veterans Memorial. And tomorrow when I meet with you, Abraham, I will pick up the board. But the rendition that we asked for is complete. I think you probably saw that.
Yeah.
And so we have a colored poster board that I'll be utilizing. I've got meetings on the 9th and the 14th. I'll ask staff to send out something to all of us so that you guys all know about it. But I'll be meeting with the Auxiliary, the American Legion Post 25, and the VFW, all in those 2 days period, to showcase the memorial, get some input, and Post 25 is also, I had a 3-hour meeting with him, and it was a very good meeting, and he's on board with supporting it, and we're actually even talking about a, much like an adopt a highway kind of situation, where maybe Post 25 or VFW or a combination of both kind of adopts the monument to help them on the maintenance issues and
great.
act as its protector, guardian kind of thing. So it was a very productive meeting. Memorial Day, I want to publicly apologize to my colleagues because I was so focused on this speech that I didn't acknowledge my colleagues being there, but our pro tem was there and also Ms. Walker. I put a ton of time into that speech, and I got to say that
This is good.
to this point, it's the thing I've looked forward to all year is doing that speech. And
And you did a really good job.
Bill
Bill
Gabe wrote it,
great
I
until I
think.
sat down, and then I go, oh, damn, I forgot to acknowledge. And also I wanted to acknowledge the Boy Scouts were there, which I thought was really cool because, that's kind of our future. So I stood
blew
up.
us all off.
Yeah, I stood up thinking I'm going to acknowledge the Boy Scouts, thank my colleagues, and I just went right into my speech. And but I think it was a good speech.
It was really good. It was great.
So anyways, but I very much enjoyed that, and like I said, I've actually looked forward to that all year, so.
You should have announced that Gil, this was his last one.
Yeah, and for all you guys that know Gil Perez, he's been doing that, he's been chairing that for Elks for 13 years. He announced his retirement, basically. We're not really sure where that's gonna go. In speaking to the exalted ruler of the Elks this year, she actually said they're not sure who is going to take it up next year or if it's even going to continue.
Wow.
But I did, in that 3-hour conversation with the post commander for American Legion, said that might be an opportunity for them to step in, and they're very much interested. So
Wow.
I'm going to try to get those two bodies together and have some talk about, because I think that's a incredibly important thing. I wish more people would come out to that event and support our veterans and our military. Want to commend our police department on another successful Coffee with a Cop. I was unfortunately unable to make it. I was out of town, but saw some good pictures on Facebook. It looked like it was pretty well attended, and CHP participated too, right? So I saw a couple of guys there handing out coffee in the drive-through, which is kind of cool. So.
That's cool.
And that's my report. I will say that I think today is a historic day for us.
Yeah.
I think we've made some big, bold decisions. I think now it's up to us to educate our community on where this leads us or where it could lead us. And the future is really in the hands of the voters, but I think it's definitely on us to help educate them and show them where we are. So I will definitely take the lead, and I'm committed to that, but I will also look to my colleagues here to assist with that, so.
We're there for you, mister.
All right, with that said, we're adjourned.